What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories.
10 rupees. Chapter 226. Advertise here. Garo Island. He was the only person in the spacious hall, with a jug of rum and a cup on the table. Jiāng Liú was frowning at the moment, thinking about something. One piece is all ready, but what should I do next? After the Black Flag pirates arrived at the last island, their momentum grew stronger, and his reputation as Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú was even more resonant throughout the world. However, in one thing, he has the same cognition as Roger. That is, when they arrived at that island, they were indeed gone early. He got some amazing information. Raftel recorded something, but that was of no use to him, at least in this day and age. Uranus, Pluton, Poseidon. Muttering in his mouth, a trace of helplessness flashed in Jiāng Liú's eyes. Some things, in this world, need to meet certain special requirements before they can be achieved. And this is impossible in this era. But wait 20 years. Thinking of this, Jiāng Liú frowned tighter. 20 years later, his companions are getting old, even he is already 40 or 50 years old. The hero's twilight years, this makes it difficult to face. Moreover, 20 years is too long. If you don't want to wait, then you can only rely on Ash's ability. Jiāng Liú's eyes flickered slightly, sinking into thought. Traveling across time, it must be impossible to take away the entire Black Flag pirate group, which means that only some people can travel with him to the future. What about the rest? The Black Flag pirate group is now a huge monster. If he leaves his captain and accompanied by the disappearance of a group of cadres, no one knows what will happen next. It is not easy to forge such a pirate group, the Kingdom of New World, and he does not want this kingdom to disappear like this. A few days later, rapid footsteps sounded in the hall. Captain, Captain. The visitor was a young pirate, panting and shouting loudly. What's the matter? So anxious. Jiāng Liú raised his head and asked with a smile. He has been thinking about what to do next. With them in the Black Flag, his momentum is getting bigger and bigger every day. He seems to have become the greatest pirate and overlord of this era. Beyond the rocks, the crew under his command also shocked the world with their reputation. Your bounty has changed again. The pirate said loudly. Oh, Jiāng Liú looked up and smiled. As far as his current status is concerned, no amount of bounty will have much impact, because in this world, there is basically no existence that can really kill him single-handedly. Now your bounty is 6.8 billion Baileys. The highest in the world. The pirate said excitedly. Is it just news? Jiāng Liú asked with a grin. Of course, not only that, in addition to that, Roger has also reached Raftel, the ultimate island, and his current momentum is also great. Everyone in the world says that this era has produced a hegemon, a king. And you are the overlord of this era. Roger is a bit inferior. The pirate said excitedly. Overlord. Jiāng Liú raised his eyebrows and laughed. This news is very interesting. Roger has arrived at the Grand Line. Is he also called One Piece? There was thought in his eyes, but he didn't care anymore. In this era, if Roger is the One Piece, then he is a legend, a symbol of the times, and surpasses One Piece's Sea Overlord. So, what will Roger pirates do afterwards? Jiāng Liú asked again soon. They disappeared. The pirate replied. Did it disappear? Jiāng Liú was thoughtful, not surprising. After a long while, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. I already know what you are going to do next, so let's wait and see you one last time. After a pause, he sighed softly again. After all, I was the one who brought you the end of your life. After that, Jiāng Liú looked at the pirate in front of him. A puzzled expression appeared on the other's face. Obviously he could not understand what he said. Go, let me know if you have any news. Time goes by, keep going. The momentum of the Black Flag is getting bigger and bigger, and the Dark Forbidden area is expanding to the surrounding area again, and now it has covered nearly 50 islands, which is like a huge maritime kingdom. The number of warships under his command has reached an astonishing 300, and the number of pirates has exceeded 50,000. The reputation of the overlord of the sea is getting louder and louder. It is the existence of countless forces. Even the world government and marine seem to be afraid of the strength of this kingdom for a while and dare not act rashly. At the same time, somewhere in the world. Then, I will announce it now. Facing the rising sun, Roger spoke softly. All the crew members were silent at the moment. Shanks burst into tears. Buggy cried silently. Gently pressing the straw hat in his hand on Shanks' head, Roger smiled. You are the future, Shanks. I hope you can continue your voyage without regrets. Shanks cried bitterly, unable to say a word. Roger didn't care about Shanks anymore. He smiled and looked at the crowd and announced with a smile. Roger pirates, disband. Then he turned and left. The sunlight stretched his back very long. See Circle Calendar 1498. The Black Flag pirates has become the overlord of the New World. Neither the Whitebeard pirates nor Kaido, the Paigum and the likes can stand up against him. However, in the past year, Haichi has appeared to be very low-key, and has not expanded everywhere, but is silently developing and consolidating his kingdom. Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú, the overlord of this era, also disappeared and no longer appeared in front of everyone. Jalo Island, in the main hall. Are you sure? Letterfield, don't you go with us? Jiāng Liú asked condensely. Letterfield grinned. I was alone for the first half of my life, and of course I couldn't bear to be separated from my companions, but. He sighed slightly, he said again. I seem to have an inseparable connection with this era. It makes me unable to make up my mind to walk with everyone. After a pause, Letterfield laughed again. It's okay, aren't there these young guys to accompany me? You said you will go to the future. Then, one day in the future, we must still have a moment to meet again. Isn't it? Jiāng Liú nodded solemnly when he heard the words. He then pushed a box to Letterfield. After I leave, Black Flag does need someone to maintain it. When you feel your energy is low, turn on him. Letterfield raised his eyebrows and smiled, opened the box and looked at the spiral-shaped red fruit inside. You know, I don't need this kind of thing. Jiāng Liú has a serious expression and a deep voice. Trust me, one day, you will use it. Chapter 227. Advertise here. Looking directly at the young man in front of him, Letterfield let out a light sigh, and said with a smile. In your eyes, I am already an old man. Jiāng Liú just smiles. Strictly speaking, Letterfield is indeed not young anymore. Perhaps in this era, he is still a man of life, but when time passes, 20 years later, he will be old and will grow old. Enter the same situation as Whitebeard. Well, you are the captain, I will listen to you. Letterfield closed the box and put it away with a smile. He took it very solemnly. After the group of people in front of him left, this thing might be the few memories he could miss the past years. Seeing this scene, Jiāng Liú just laughed. When to set off? Letterfield asked. When the era of great navigation begins. Jiāng Liú said softly. I want to see Roger farewell. Letterfield was startled, with a look of incomprehension on his face. You will understand soon. 18 inches. The two faced each other, then they drank to each other, smiling and talking about the past, and then talking about the future. Letterfield cried as he spoke, and in front of Jiāng Liú, he did not hide his emotions at all. I can't bear you, I really can't bear it. I don't even know whether the shuttle to the future you said is reliable or not. If I can't see you, I really don't know what will happen. Jiāng Liú sat across from him, not knowing how to answer, he could only remain silent, and finally reached out and patted him on the shoulder. We will see you again. Trust me, this is my promise to you as the captain. Letterfield raised his head and looked directly at Jiāng Liú with tearful eyes. I believe you, I will be waiting for you, waiting for you. Waiting for the moment when everyone gets together again. In this wine, the two of them drank with dim eyes and fell asleep. Time passed quickly, and the outside world changed. See Circle Calendar in 1498, a news that shocked the world suddenly swept over the sea. One Piece brother Roger has been arrested. Are you kidding? Didn't the Roger pirates disappear? How could Roger be arrested by Marine all of a sudden? This is a big event. It feels outrageous and incredible. What the hell is going on? How can someone like Roger be caught easily? The pirate king Roger was arrested, and the pirate overlord Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú also disappeared. Both of them have reached the last island. What did they see? Hearing this news, the world only feels that the clouds are over their heads, and they are puzzled. But for the pirate camp, it's fairly stable. Jiāng Liú, the overlord of the sea, surpassed Roger. As long as he sits in the black restricted area, Marine has to think twice about what he does. About half a month later, Naval Headquarters released a message to the world. In half a month, Brother One Piece Roger will be executed in Logue Town. This news caused a big sensation, especially for Marine and world government. It was a move to save face. For the pirates, it is a drama worthy of attention. One Piece brother Roger was executed. What an interesting thing. In this era, Roger is not the top, but he is also famous, and he is also known as the greatest man besides Jiāng Liú. The whole world was undercurrents, and most people started to head towards Logue Town. The execution of One Piece will be extremely shocking to countless young people who have dreams or are already pirates. Within the Black Forbidden Zone, a huge black jewel-like ship suddenly set off. This scene shocked many members of the Black Flag pirate group and made them stare. It's the Cadre and the captain's ship. Black Pearl, the fastest ship in the world. Roger's execution, even the captain and Cadres, triggered. I haven't seen the Cadres in action for a long time. I didn't expect Roger's execution to shock them. The pirates said loudly that it is not easy for the Black Flag pirates to see the Cadres on Jalo Island. The power of the Black Flag became stronger and stronger, and there were countless powerhouses under its command. The Supernova pirate group was quickly absorbed, and as time passed, the new generation gradually grew up. Today's Black Flag is not only in quantity, but also in scale and quality. It is a veritable maritime overlord. The Black Pearl cut through the sea, the sails swelled, and it flew out in the blink of an eye, quickly disappearing into the eyes of the crew. Along the way, countless exclaims were elicited. At the same time, the flying pirates were in the group. What? You said Roger was arrested by Marine. To be executed in half a month. What a joke, how could it be possible to catch Roger with a wine pouch like Marine? Golden Lion Shiki roared. The injury on his body has been recuperated, and now he has healed a lot. It's just that because he offended Jiāng Liú last time, he didn't dare to show up for fear that the other party would come to him. Because of fear, Golden Lion even found several islands to connect together, suspended them in the air, and created a sky island. I would never believe in such a thing. He roared and headed towards naval headquarters single-handedly. 3 days later, news spread from the world that Golden Lion Shiki made a big fuss in the naval headquarters and was arrested in the impelled down underwater prison. This makes countless people regret that a strong man on the sea has ended in this way. At the same time, Jiāng Liú, who was standing on the bow of the ship, also heard the news. He just smiled, but didn't react much. It's okay for him to be sober and sober inside, a guy who strictly miscalculates his strength and ambitions. The captain of the Black Flag, just such a light evaluation. Time continued to pass, and the time for Roger's execution was getting closer and Logue Town became more and more lively. All forces have come to this ordinary island on weekdays, and Marine is heavily guarded, patrolling everywhere. One by one, the pirates who are famous, or who have just gone out to sea, have already joined the fun and came here. The pirates that can be identified at the moment include Doflamingo, Hawkeye Mahawk, Crocodile, etc. As for the Black Flag group mentioned a few days ago, I haven't found it yet. Inside the Logue Town Marine Station, the colonel reported nervously. If you can find the trail of the Black Flag, they won't be the #1 pirate group in the world. Sengoku said in a deep voice. After a pause, his eyes were solemn. I can be sure that they will definitely appear in this town. Chapter 228. Advertise here. Standing on the 3rd floor of Marine Station, Sengoku looked out from here. The entire Logue Town clearly appeared in his eyes. The streets are rushed and crowded with people, which is absolutely different from the usual scenes. There will never be so many people in Logue Town daily. Roger's execution obviously shocked the world and caused a huge sensation, which brought people from all over the world to this island. At the same time, this is also accompanied by tremendous pressure. On the Marine side, 3 admiral, a marshal, many vice admiral elites, and troops have been stationed on this island. With such a formation, it can be said that the whole formation is ready. Where are you hiding? Sengoku murmured. He didn't know if the Black Flag group would make trouble in the future. If such a group wants to make trouble, it will be a huge trouble for Marine. But the execution day is imminent, and Marine needs to pay attention to many points, and naturally it is impossible to stare at the Black Flag. Time passed quietly, and half a month passed quickly. The sun in Logue Town this day is particularly bright, the streets are full of voices, people are standing next to each other, and their faces are full of excitement and excitement. This day was the day Roger was executed. At the port, ships from all over the country have long been gambled on by ships from all over the country. Many ships were forced to stop at a remote coastal entrance and circled the original road before arriving here. There are a lot of pirates. Almost all the wicked guys from all over the world have gathered here. Garp threw a piece of donut into his mouth and frowned. Now I can't take care of cleaning them up. Today's theme is Roger. As long as this matter is successfully completed, nothing will be a problem. Sengoku said in a deep voice. In today's Logue Town, all kinds of dark forces are gathered together. If there weren't Marine elites patrolling everywhere on the street, I am afraid it would have already become a mess. But at very moments, Marine can only endure, as long as it is not too much, he will open one eye and close one eye, and the fights within the pirates, they will not see. Around the square of the execution platform, people were tightly packed, and all roads in Logue Town were blocked. Around the execution platform, Marine was heavily equipped to stop the crowd. At this moment, the sun was shining and falling, and the execution platform was still empty and did not stand there. The time has not yet arrived, and Marine's senior management is also preparing. The execution of Roger is definitely a major event. Even Sengoku and others, who are admiral, have to treat it with dignity. Among the crowd, some people are wrapped in black cloth robes, some are grinning, some are sad, and all kinds of emotions are vividly reflected here. Hey 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 hey. It's really a grand event. Big people from all over the world, at this moment, are all gathered on this unknown island. From today onwards, Logue Town will be famous for it. The man in the pink feather coat with glasses, grinning. Dover, there are many dangerous guys around us. Behind him, someone whispered nervously. The crowd gathered here, one squeezed one by one, and many people stood tiptoe and looked forward. But there are also people who are covered in black hats and can't see anything clearly. Look at the side, the recently famous swordsman, Mahawk Hawkeye. Young pirate, Crocodile, I heard that it is Logia fruit ability. There is also that guy, even though he wears a mask, his figure has clearly exposed himself. From the Black Flag pirates, Moria. The people behind Doflamingo whispered nervously. His eyes also followed him to see a figure clearly, and after a while, he grinned lightly. Roger's execution is the end of an era, but it is also the advent of a new era. Even if there is the village of the overlord Jiāng Liú, this era is finally over. Our new generation will have a new sky of our own. I have a hunch, Pika, the next new era will come. A magnificent era. There was madness in Doflamingo's words, with a hint of excitement. Suddenly, someone squeezed from behind, and the people behind Doflamingo were shocked and squeezed to the side. Such an overbearing behavior made them frown, revealing a fierce look. On weekdays, they are not kind people. One of them, with a cold face, grabbed the arm of the person who was squeezing over. The man who was being pulled stopped, turned his head, his eyes were flat and sharp, and slowly turned his head. The black coat on top of his head was slightly shaken, and the wind blew up, revealing an axe-like chisel underneath. Like a face. Resolute, square, and majestic. When the Doflamingo's people saw this face, their pupils shrank instantly, and their whole body shook, and they were actually stiff there. Quote. What's wrong with you? Quote. The person next to him found something was wrong, and immediately turned around, and at the same time looked up at the tall man who had turned around. You are. His companion instantly shook his whole body and froze there as well. Doflamingo noticed the abnormality, and turned around to see that his pupils were also constricted, as if he had been shocked. This man is. He was shaking all over, looking at this face. The other party turned his eyes and stared at him. His complexion was flat and he couldn't see his emotions. After looking at him, his voice was heavy and magnetic, and at the same time it gave people a strong sense of depression. What's up? Doflamingo's eyes were solemn, his forehead oozes fine sweat, and the others froze there motionless. No. Doflamingo responded swiftly and replied immediately. The other party nodded, turned around again, tidied his clothes and hats, and hid his face. After that, he squeezed forward quickly and followed his companion. Dover. Looking at the other person's back, Pika's voice was trembling. Ha, yes, it's him. Doflamingo's eyes kept shrinking and expanding, and then he announced the other's name. Black Flag Pirates, Sword Fighter, Cyrus. That man actually appeared here. Moreover, besides him, there are more than a dozen people who squeezed past just now. They are all uniform, they must be his companions. The people behind him said with a trembling voice. Hey, you're right, the Black Flag is here. Doflamingo grinned, a little nervous and fearful. Chapter 229. In the noisy crowd, suddenly a part of the area seemed quiet, and a group of people in black robes reached the front rows in a blink of an eye. The man at the head looks tall, about 3 meters tall, and the others behind him are equally burly and sturdy. They just stand there to distinguish them from others, giving people a sense of spiritual oppression. It's them. Not far away, Sengoku's pupils contracted while standing on the high platform and noticed it. The Black Flag group finally appeared. Following his words, the vice admiral behind him also cast their eyes on the position of the Black Flag group. But everyone did not act rashly. It is not a good thing to start a war easily here. Observe first and keep an eye on them. If you don't cause trouble, you don't need to talk to them. Taking a deep breath, Sengoku said in a deep voice. He stared at the opponent's location, saw that this group of people squeezed into the front row, there was no other reaction, and he quietly breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that Haichi was only here to watch the execution of Roger. It seems that we came a little earlier. Under the black robe, Jiāng Liú faintly laughed. Roger hasn't come out yet, what the hell is Marine doing? Waldo looked at the high platform and murmured in a low voice. Wait quietly, Waldo, this is a great event. Bin Jack said with a solemn expression. For the pirates, the execution of Brother Roger, who is known as the Pirate King by the world, was indeed a huge event and it was of great significance. There are so many guys here. Waldo continued to mutter. He glanced around, looking for a familiar target. After a while, he was in the opposite position and noticed a group of robes halfway through them. Hey, I saw it, Roger Pirates guys. Jiāng Liú followed Waldo's sight and saw a group of people standing there quietly, their faces covered by black robes, looking anxiously and nervously towards the execution platform. Soon, the headed man noticed their gaze and looked over at the same time. It's Jiāng Liú, Waldo and the others. Rayleigh's glasses flashed under his black robe, and said in a low voice. Unexpectedly, this group of guys would take a risk and come here. The man behind him looked complicated. They are now the world's top pirate group, and they are all over the second half of the Grand Line. They are willing to take such a risk to come here, they are indeed the Black Flag. Rayleigh said in a deep voice. With Jiāng Liú's courage, even Roger can't judge what he will do in the future. Watch it quietly. This group of people must have their purpose when they came here. After a pause, Rayleigh looked at the execution platform again. Marine has obviously noticed them. With Jiāng Liú attracting firepower, our goal will be smaller and safer. Afterwards, everyone continued to wait quietly and anxiously. The captain of his own hasn't seen him for a while, although he knew his ending a long time ago, it still feels unacceptable when facing him in person. Around the execution platform in Logue Town, there is a mess, and the noisy sounds are mixed together. Even if they are not far apart, it is difficult to hear what the other party is saying. Soon, time passed. Suddenly, at a certain moment, someone from Marine boarded the execution stand. Da 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 da. The clear footsteps echoed in everyone's ears, making them all look up, and the entire square suddenly became quiet. Are you coming? Everyone boiled, but there was still no one to speak, and the tense atmosphere quietly filled out. Jiāng Liú and others raised their heads and looked to the high platform. Sengoku looked serious, dressed in Marine Admiral costumes, and the righteous cloak fluttered gently with the wind behind him. When he stood at the front desk, he glanced down at everyone's eyes. Now, we will begin the execution of the world's criminals, the pirate brother Rado Roger. This is undoubtedly a solemn thing, so everyone present also seemed very quiet and listened carefully. Pirate brother Rado Roger, since he went to sea, he has committed crimes in this sea for decades. His existence seriously threatens the safety of the world and civilians. The crimes committed are as follows. One by one, the crimes were read out one by one. Some people laughed, some screamed excitedly, and some didn't respond but just sneered. Sengoku didn't care about the attitude of the people below. After he read a long list of crimes, he took a slight breath and turned to the rear. Now, take out Roger and execute him. Everyone on the scene turned their eyes, and then, their pupils shrank and stared at the figure that was greeted by everyone's gaze, with ragged clothes and black hair covering his face. Roger. One Piece, brother Roger. He was actually arrested, and he has to be tortured here. It seems like a dream, the famous pirate is really going to be executed. From the crowd, there were bursts of screams. Captain Shanks, Buggy cried loudly and yelled loudly. The crowd boiled, and their voices were quickly drowned out without noticing. Jiāng Liú's eyes moved slightly, staring at the figure, his expression became serious. Only by being in this era, can you understand how shocking and spectacular what Roger is about to do. I'll see you off. Whispering softly, Jiāng Liú spit out such words. With shackles, Roger, who was walking slowly forward, seemed to hear him. His head trembled slightly, as if he glanced in the direction where Jiāng Liú was. But soon, he was frustrated by the cold jailer behind him. Then, without saying a word, the three of them stepped onto the execution stand amidst everyone's roar. Da 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 da. The sound of footsteps became extremely slow at this moment, clearly reflected in everyone's hearts, and gradually made them excited and enthusiastic. Soon, Roger and the three were already standing on the execution platform. He was crushed by the two execution jailers and fell to his knees. Now, we begin the execution. Sengoku said in a deep voice, his voice spreading to the audience. Do you have anything else to say? Roger. Leave a chance for the dying to say his last words, this is Marine's last kindness. As soon as the voice fell, the man with his head hanging down and his black hair covering his eyes, the One Piece King Elder Roger raised his head, his black hair spread out, revealing a mustache with a smile on his face. Everyone was stunned. No one thought that this man would be able to laugh out loud in the face of death. Call. He took a deep breath, then shouted out loud. Want my treasure? The first sentence shocked the audience, everyone's expressions changed, and Sengoku's face changed even more horribly. Jiāng Liú pulled off his coat and hat and laughed. Behind him, everyone in the Black Flag pirate group tore off their coats and hats and appeared in front of everyone, laughing. Ha 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 ha. Find if you want, I put them all there. The huge sound shook the entire Logue town, and also made everyone present, and people in the world watching this execution go crazy. Chapter 230. Advertise here. The audience was shocked, everyone was confused and sluggish for this sudden appearance, and then there was a trace of heart-throbbing and excitement. Black Flag. It's the Black Flag pirates. The strongest man in the world, Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú, World Destroyer Waldo, Cyrus the Swordsman, Jack Bin Jack, Sister Ashi, the ship Dr. Nakan, Karma, etc., they are all here. Did you hear what Roger said? He put all the treasures there, is it true? It's so shocking. Doesn't it mean that when you reach the final island, you will be able to get the great treasure that Roger has accumulated in his life? Everyone yelled loudly, the pirates were caught in a heated discussion, and the scene was a little uncontrollable for a while. Some people even started yelling, rushing forward at the execution ground, wanting to face Roger to ask questions, their faces flushed in anxiousness. Roger is right, not just him, I also put the treasure there. So, everyone who saw this scene and heard these words, do you want fame? Is wealth, status? Go to the depths of the sea to find it, Roger and I, put everything there. Glancing at the warm atmosphere of the scene, Jiāng Liú laughed loudly, his body suddenly rose, and the whole venue was humming and trembling. In conjunction with the other crew members of the Black Flag pirate group, the amazing breath that also exuded at this moment, the hearts of the people on the scene were trembling, and the atmosphere burst. Treasure. This is definitely an unprecedented treasure. The two legendary big pirates, did they put everything there? Is it a game? Two people like this speak such amazing words at the same time. The faces of the pirates changed. Although they were questioning, more people's ambitions were aroused, and they began to yearn for the island where everything was on. The ultimate island, Raftel. Taken from the mouth of Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú, the Black Flag pirate group, he named the island and put everything there. Execution. Quick. Execution. Sengoku's face changed wildly, and he roared loudly. Without any hesitation, at the same time, Garp, Zephyr, and several vice admiral behind him all looked at Jiāng Liú with serious expressions. When they move, they are ready to fight. Jiāng Liú, in such a public occasion, to speak such words, even if you are the world's top powerhouse, we will never allow it. Zephyr shouted in a deep voice. This time, you're playing too much foolishly. Garp said with a sullen face. Jiāng Liú was still laughing, his laughter blended with the voice of the jailer strangling Roger. Blood and smiling faces bloomed at the same moment. Go, I put everything there. Roger's laughter also drifted out of the wind, and then he closed his eyes forever. But even until the last moment of death, the One Piece King Elder Roger, still smiling, seemed to be full of hope and optimism about the future. One Piece Roger's life ended here. Someone laughed excitedly. His words before his death ignited this explosive era. Countless young people rushed to the sea with ambitions. At the same time, some people burst into tears. Captain Shanks, Buggy almost fainted from crying. They couldn't accept the figure with his head hanging down on the execution stage. Rayleigh, Jabba and others held their foreheads with their right hands and lowered their heads. There were crystal tears flickering between their fingers, but there was no sound. The former Roger pirate group fell into a sad silence at this moment. Quickly, quickly, surround them. Don't let the Haichi gang leave. Accompanied by the sound of dense footsteps, soon a large number of pirates swarmed around the people, and at the same time, Admiral, Vice Admiral, and elite soldiers have all surrounded here. This scene caused many people's expressions to change slightly, and then they turned around and evacuated quickly. Something big. Get out of here. Marine was angered by Roger's words before his death and Jiāng Liú's response. The big thing is not good, brothers withdraw. Suddenly, in the originally dense square, people immediately began to flee, and for a while, they were in chaos. Sengoku stood on the high platform, frowning quietly, and stepping out beside him. The group of Jiāng Liú are gone. A deep, serious voice echoed in the air. Find flowers. Through the chaos, this group of people suddenly disappeared. It is very difficult for us to find them deliberately hidden in such a dense crowd. Sengoku shook his head. It's okay. Our mission today has been successfully concluded. Roger's execution has been completed. As for Haichi and Jiāng Liú, these people are not so easy to deal with. After a pause, he said in a hollow voice. Now, it's not the right time to attack them. Sengoku heard the words and nodded slightly. Not bad. With their current strength and the power in the sea area that Jiāng Liú called the New World, the current Marine, rashly, may hurt ourselves. 0. This matter, leave it to the next era. It has to be handed over to you too. Sora said softly. Sengoku shook his head helplessly. I'm under a lot of pressure. Young people don't have any pressure. How can they grow up? Marine, it's indeed time for a new generation. Kong laughed. Then, his eyes looked at 3 young Marine Rear Admiral not far away. When these 3 little guys grow up, they will become Marines' mainstays. In the future, they may be the sharpest knife against Jiāng Liú. Following Sora's gaze, Sengoku saw Kuzan, Pelusolino, and Sakazuki, and nodded in agreement. Their potential is indeed huge. In a few years, their strength will inevitably enter the realm of Admiral. With a smile on Sora's face, he glanced at the dead Roger again. Everything is going for the better, isn't it? Sengoku smiled softly when he heard the words. Looking down, a large number of young people surging toward the shore, with excitement on their faces and ambitions in their eyes, were cast a little shadow in their hearts. Such a situation is probably not a good thing for Marine. The world will become more chaotic. At the same time, at a remote coast in Logue Town, the Black Pearl set sail again. Then everyone, next, let Ashi take us on a special and magical trip. Jiāng Liú stood on the deck, grinning. We will meet in the future. 1. Chapter 231. Advertise here. A clear voice sounded on the Black Pearl, and everyone's eyes looked at the woman standing in front of the captain. After spending so long together, everyone didn't even know the abilities of this beautiful woman. Originally thought that the other party was just a swordsman with superb swordsmanship, they didn't expect that they still had the power to control time. This undoubtedly made everyone shocked and curious. Being able to travel through the long river of time and travel to the future world is an extremely novel thing in anyone's imagination. Jiāng Liú, I am actually not very familiar with my abilities. If I want to take everyone to the future, I may not be able to control the specific time scale. Tianyu Shi was a little nervous and a little embarrassed. She was afraid of letting down everyone's expectations. Relax, ours, and do your best to show your strength, we all believe in you. Jiāng Liú took a few steps forward, took the opponent's hand, and said with a smile, giving the opponent a certain strength in his eyes. With the support of her lover, Tianyushi was slightly relieved, and then she looked at the other people, the crew on the ship, expressing their extreme support and belief. Having been together for so many years, they have already formed the belief that they trust each other. Partners, naturally the most trustworthy. It is good. Should you go now? Tianyu nodded and asked solemnly. Everyone and I are ready. Jiāng Liú smiled. Go ahead, Sister Shi, we can't wait to see the future time and space. Has the Black Flag conquered the sea? Deputy Captain Letterfield, will our pirate group develop further? Waldo shouted. Hearing this, Jiāng Liú squinted his eyes, then smiled. Even I can't tell what the future world will look like. In this era, he became the overlord of the sea, surpassing Roger. This is already different from the original plot. The wings of a butterfly will cause tornadoes and sandstorms on the other side of the earth. What kind of overlord like him will turn the world into? Or, this world will automatically repair all irregularities, and in the future, reduce his influence to a minimum, so that the real protagonist will be born and continue his story. But anyway, after arriving at the final island, Jiāng Liú knew that in the future he had to take a look. Waiting for 20 years is a plan, and using the power of Tianyushi is also a good choice. When Tianyu looked at everyone with an excited expression, she took a deep breath and her expression became serious. Time and space shuttle is an unknown thing, taking everyone together, and it is something I have never tried before. So, whatever happens after that, it will be normal. We may still be together, or we may be separated all over the world. But I believe that everyone will meet again and become a black flag. When these words were said, everyone nodded silently, and their hearts became nervous and excited. Later, Tien Yushi closed his eyes. A gust of wind blew up suddenly, became bigger in an instant, and swept the entire Black Pearl. Whirring. Suddenly, the wind grew stronger and stronger, and the space immediately began to twist. A huge Uzumaki appeared on everyone's head in the next second. Buzzing. Everything was shaking, and in a flash, Uzumaki sucked everyone in. Ah! Waldo and others yelled, and disappeared in no time. Time is like flowing water, once famous for a while, leaving behind many legends of the Black Flag pirates, also from the day Roger was executed, gradually faded out of people's sight. And in the following era, countless young heroes appeared and gained a reputation. The beasts Kaido, Big Umum pirates, Whitebeard, and the newly emerging Emperor Redhead Shanks, under the test of time, they have gradually become the four emperors of the sea. The world, call them four emperors. And the dark forbidden area in New World, the area that has faded out of sight for the world, is slowly forgotten by people. It has become a real forbidden zone, a taboo that no one mentions again. Hundreds of birds compete for the flow, and all kinds of frosty days compete freely. The age of the great pirates is coming, and countless pirates with ambitions and dreams rush to the sea. In a blink of an eye, the sun is rising and sunset, and nearly 20 years have passed. See Circle Calendar 1518. East Blue, Cocoa Village. The sun is dazzling, the orange grove exudes a sweet smell, and the sea breeze is blowing in, making people feel comfortable and at ease. But the whole village was full of tension, anger, unwillingness and fear at this time. Damn it's Dragon Pirate Group. Why, these guys have to stay here. Poor Nami, she has to endure this when she is young. Her suffering, we should have replaced it. From time to time, there were painful and suppressed voices in the streets, but they quickly disappeared. In the attic not far from them, in the courtyard, a group of pirates was gathering. This group of pirates is composed of Murlocs, East Blue's notorious dragon pirate group, headed by the Murlocs Arlong. The villagers of Kokoja didn't know who this guy was, but his brutality was frightening. Arlong, I still don't understand, why do you have a soft spot for that little human girl? Inside the courtyard, a Murloc asked inexplicably. Sitting on the stairs casually, Arlong with no expression on his face heard the words, raised his head, just glanced at the Murloc who was opening, and then made the opponent tremble. Many people don't know Arlong's true identity, and only think he is an ordinary pirate, but those who know his details do. This unremarkable Murloc pirate was previously a member of the legendary Black Flag pirate group. Black Flag. In today's era, the name that has disappeared has undoubtedly left many people puzzled. But the older generation of pirates, Marine, knows his name and understands more deeply what kind of pirate group this is. I admire her very much, if I can train her to become a qualified sailor. Arlong spoke slowly, with a trace of memory and hope on his face. Maybe I can come back. Having said that, he stopped and sighed deeply. The other Murloc and pirates were puzzled, and they didn't understand why their captain was so strong and so sad. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the sky ahead, hovering and falling. Then, boom, with a heavy sound, it landed in the woods full of orange trees. Arlong stared at the sky blankly, his eyes sharpened suddenly. Go and see what is going on there. Chapter 232. Boom. The sound of the tremor spread throughout the Kokoja village, and many people in the streets looked up in amazement and looked in the direction of the orange grove. There is Nokigao, Nami, Belle-Mare's home. What happened? The expressions of the people in the village changed drastically. Because of the safety of the whole village, Nami chose to succumb to the dragon pirates. If Nuauchigao can't protect them well, it would be too incompetent. Let's take a look. A Jian looked solemn and shouted loudly. He picked up the weapon beside him and rushed over. The young man behind hesitated slightly and followed. At the same time, Belle-Mare's house. Whirring. The strong wind swept through, the smoke and dust swept, the orange grove in front was rushed to and fro by the violent impact, and the ground was rumbling. Belle-Mare, who was drying the clothes, was stunned. So everything happened before her eyes, so she clearly saw what was happening in the orange grove ahead. A human being landed from the sky and fell into the woods with a thud, causing an earthquake. My orange tree. After a while, Belle-Mare's complexion changed, and she shouted 18 loudly. Unlike the original, she was not shot by Arlong because she did not pay 100,000. At this time, Arlong, despite the same ferociousness, was less hostile, and did not hate humans as much as in the original book. He ruled the Hokoja village, although he was still oppressing the villagers, but this was what he believed was his instinct as a pirate. Nuauchigao also ran out of the room, looking at everything in front of him in shock. What happened? The two of them were stunned there. Such a thing was really surprising. The uninvited guests who descended from the sky were too strange and never happened. The smoke disappeared, and the eyes of the two of them saw a tall figure with double knives slung around their waists. The black hair was naturally erected, tied behind their heads, and only a few strands floated from their foreheads, wrapped in a black kimono. Dress loosely. Who is he? Nuauchi was stunned and asked in amazement. She was surprised to find that although the man was different from ordinary people and had an indescribable feeling of stalwart, he was surprisingly handsome. The muscles of the exposed arms are very strong, giving people a very strong and powerful feeling. The glance of the eyes makes people feel the pressure involuntarily. It seems that the end of my journey has ruined your orange orchard. I'm really sorry. With a grin, Jiāng Liú said with a smile. He stepped up to the two of them, but noticed that the two ladies cautiously stepped back. Who are you? Belmir asked solemnly with a deep voice. She used to be a marine, and smelled an unusual smell on the man in front of her. That was the smell of a pirate. Moreover, it is not an ordinary pirate. Jiāng Liú, you can call me Jiāng Liú. Jiāng Liú said with a smile. He glanced around, observing everything around him, judging where he was. The sky is blue, and the orange tree manor exudes a delicate fragrance. The two women in front of her make her feel strange and familiar. Unfamiliar name. Nuoji Gao murmured. My name is Nuauchi Gao, and you don't look like a bad person. Belmir turned around and glared at her. Bad guys, can you tell from the surface? How can there be such a handsome bad guy? Nuoji Gao's cheeks blushed. Belmir's eyes are still full of caution and vigilance, and her instinctive reaction makes her feel that this person is very dangerous. Of course I am not a bad person. Jiāng Liú said with a smile. He observed the two of them, and now he recognized who the other party was. Belmir and Nuauchi Gao, but Nuauchi Gao's height and appearance do not seem to match his impression. Looking at Nuauchi Gao's age, Belmir should be gone. Suspiciously, Jiāng Liú's eyes flashed thoughtfully. You suddenly fell from the sky, and nothing happened. Belmir pointed to the sky and asked seriously. Normal people will not fall from the sky, and they are still intact. This guy is obviously extraordinary, with double knives slung around his waist. He is probably a swordsman. My physical fitness is better. Jiāng Liú smiled. That's not so good, Belmir said. Haha, is there anything to eat? I'm a little hungry. Jiāng Liú patted his stomach. He didn't know how other people felt when they traveled through time and space, but he was extremely tired. A weird and colorful passage, as if it would never reach its end. He kept running, until he didn't know when. Suddenly there was a light in front of him, falling from the sky. Almost all energy was not consumed. Belmir hasn't spoken yet. Nuauchi Gao has already said loudly. Yes, the fried rice that Belmir just made. After speaking, she turned around and ran in. This little guy. Belmir frowned, a little helpless. Even the identity of the other party hasn't been judged clearly, just so helpful. Nuauchi Gao has been completely fooled by the other party's face. You stand here, don't walk around. Belmir said cautiously. Jiāng Liú laughed, but he hadn't been treated like this in a long time. Of course, he would not listen to the other party's orders and watched around. It seems that this is the Kokoja village. Judging from Nuauchi Gao's age, the time should not be far from the beginning of the plot. Nami is not there, which makes Jiāng Liú more certain. After a while, Nuauchi walked over with a bowl of fried rice and handed him a spoon. Smelling the aroma of fried rice, Jiāng Liú smiled, and then he began to eat with a big mouthful of food, looking like he was devouring. Only a few bites, a bowl of fried rice was eaten clean by him. Let's have another bowl, I have a bigger appetite. Jiāng Liú smiled. Nuauchi widened her eyes. You ate too fast, right? How long have you not eaten? It should be more than 10, 20 years old. Jiāng Liú meditated for a while and answered the question. What nonsense. Nuauchi snorted loudly. Then she turned around and came out soon. Jiāng Liú finished a few bites again. As much as there is, take it out, I eat a lot. What a terrible guy, you scare me with such appetite. Nuauchi Gao was shocked. Belmir didn't speak anymore, she quietly observed Jiāng Liú. Abnormal. No matter how this man looks at her, she feels abnormal. Chapter 233. Advertise here. Ha 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 ha, have you really encountered such a thing? There will be such interesting things on the sea. After a while, Nuauchi laughed and tears came out, and she became familiar with Jiāng Liú. Belmir's pot of fried rice was almost completely eaten by Jiāng Liú, and he drank a large bucket of freshly squeezed juice. So Jiāng Liú sat in the yard by the door and told the girl about what she had seen and heard about on the sea. There are many interesting things on the sea, so I have the opportunity to see and see. Jiāng Liú said with a smile. Belmir was on the side, working silently. Observing for a period of time, although she felt that the other party was a very dangerous guy, for the time being, she did not do anything excessive. On the contrary, this young-looking man seemed to have fun with Nuauchi Gao. Of course, it's also very dangerous. Soon, Jiāng Liú emphasized again. Belmir has been in the outside world before, and he is also a very good person. Nuauchi Gao said at this time. When Nami and I were in danger, she was the one who protected us. Jiāng Liú smiled slightly and looked at Belmir. Then your mother must be a great person. Belmir is great. Nuauchi nodded happily. But soon, a dark cloud appeared on the girl's face, and she said unhappy. It's a pity that the guy on the island is too bad. Belmir and I don't think there is any chance to travel out of the island. Jiāng Liú raised his eyebrows slightly. What kind of guy is too bad? Belmir walked over at this time and stopped Nuochigao from continuing to speak. Don't bother outsiders for anything, it will cause trouble for others. Afterwards, she looked at Jiāng Liú with a flat face. When you have enough food and drink, leave this island immediately. Otherwise, you will encounter misfortune. Jiāng Liú blinked and froze there. He looked at Nuochigao, who winked at him. Misfortune. I am really interested in this one. Belmir stared at him. You are so young, it is better to listen to me. I am very interested in the misfortune you said. Jiāng Liú smiled. Belmir turned around, too lazy to talk to him anymore, but Nuochigao leaned in excitedly. Jiāng Liú, are you a swordsman with 2 knives? I heard people in the village say that the swordsmen outside are very powerful. Then you can protect Belmir and me. Nuochigao was a little excited. She is not very old now, and after chatting with Jiāng Liú, she feels very in line with each other, and she immediately put her hope on the other person. Nami is enslaved by the bad guys, and both she and Belmir are very hopeful that they can be rescued. If you protect you, it should still be okay. Jiāng Liú said with a smile. Kokoja village, if it is not very different from the plot, then the pirate group that occupies the island at this moment should be the young intern Murloc. Suddenly, Jiāng Liú sighed in his heart. For him, it was just a blink of an eye, but for the outside world, it was already vicissitudes of life and everything had changed. At the same time, he also became dignified in his heart. For nearly 2 decades, he did not seem to change the plot much. Today, it is impossible to figure out what the outside world is like. Really? Nuochigao heard this, but was excited. Well, it's not a big problem. Jiāng Liú smiled. Afterwards, he chatted with the little girl again, and Nuochi looked high, and she was about 14 or 5 years old, she was in her youthful girlhood. Belmir stood aside, frowned and lit a cigarette, looking at Jiāng Liú. If I don't leave, I can't help it. Shaking her head, she was about to go to the orange grove to sort out the trees that had been knocked down by this guy, but after a few steps, she suddenly stopped in front of her. Belmir, what's the matter? Nuojao asked curiously. Belmir turned around abruptly, looking ugly and staring at Jiāng Liú solemnly. You, hurry up and hide in the house. Jiāng Liú was taken aback. Why? Quick. Belmir shouted loudly. Afterwards, she hurried to the front to meet her. What caught the eye was the Murloc group of Arlong. At this time, every pirate had an icy look on his face. Arlong, who stood in front of him, had deep doubts in his eyes. Isn't it time to pay the money yet? Belmir greeted him and said loudly. Let's come, it's not about money. Arlong glanced at the woman and said in a deep voice. Then, he pushed the opponent away and walked forward. Back then, when the other party guarded his 2 daughters, the gun he raised was lowered again. That scene reminded him of the captain's actions in front of everyone. Although this woman is very weak, he admires each other very much in his heart. Therefore, he also decided to spare his life. Later, after noticing the talent of the orange red-haired girl, he wanted to ask the other party to help him draw a chart and train him to become an outstanding sailor. In this way, he can go to that piece of new world again to find and meet his former partners. Bring them together and recreate the old black flag. This is Arlong's dream, and also his obsession after escaping from the black restricted area embarrassingly. Quote. What happened here? Quote. Soon, Arlong saw the messy orange grove ahead, he turned his head and asked in a deep voice. It's just a gust of wind. Belmir said. She can't mention Jiāng Liú, otherwise the original amount of money will have to add another share, which is too stressful for them. A gust of wind, Arlong sneered. Behind him, the other Murlocs looked fierce. Belmir was not afraid, and slowly let out a puff of smoke. What the hell are you doing? Curious about what happened here. The whole island can hear the movement of Wang Zhao not long ago. Arlong said lightly. He looked at the small house in front of him. Nuochigao came out quickly, his expression panicked and nervous, such an expression made his heart move. You have ghosts in your hearts. What's hiding in this room? Belmir stepped forward, blocking in front. Nothing. Step aside. Arlong's eyes sharpened. Belmir didn't say a word, but he didn't take a step back. Arlong's eyes were cold, and he was about to raise his hand. But at this moment, a voice slowly came from the room. Arlong, you are so majestic. Immediately afterwards, a familiar figure bent over and walked out, standing in front of him and flying. He was in a black kimono with 2 knives on his waist, and his long black hair was simply standing behind his head. At this time, he was looking at him with plain eyes. Arlong shook his whole body, his pupils contracted, and shouted nervously and excitedly. Captain. Chapter 234. Advertise here. Captain. Arlong's name also made everyone present wide-eyed, and then looked at the tall, young-looking man in front of the cabin. Belmir and Nuoji Gaijin were stunned on the spot. When they reacted, the former pulled the girl behind him and stared at Jiāng Liú with solemn eyes. In my opinion, only a moment has passed, but in your opinion, it has changed a lot. With a light sigh, Jiāng Liú looked at Arlong. The other party was obviously not the young Murloc pirate before. He still clearly remembered the excitement of Arlong dancing and celebrating with Hody Jones and Leonard that year when he turned to the right time. Arlong in front of him, the wounds on his body slowly, added a fierce breath, and he has become less mature and gloomy after he was young and frivolous. 20 years. 20 years have passed. Arlong trembled. The world has already changed an era. When he said this, he fell silent suddenly. The era of the black flag has passed, and the glory of the black restricted area has dissipated. Today's era is the era of the Four Emperors, a chaotic era without Jiāng Liú ruling the sea. Those pirate groups that once failed one by one in their hands now control the top of the world. Why are you here? Become this ghost, Jiāng Liú said, his eyes darkened. As a Black Flag crew member, the appearance of the opponent now can be said to be very embarrassing. Captain. Arlong trembled suddenly, tears gushing in his eyes, and his body softened. He knelt directly on the ground, and burst into tears. The black flag is gone. He trembled, and said aloud words that changed Jiāng Liú's eyes. What are you saying? The low voice and terrifying majesty were all surging out at this moment, causing the people present to tremble. In the 12th year after you left, the sea is changing. Marine and the world government rushed into the Black Forbidden Zone, our kingdom of the Black Flag. Arlong took a deep breath, tears in his eyes, and said loudly. Where is Letterfield? And Enel them? Jiāng Liú asked in a deep voice. The black restricted area inevitably caused great changes. What he didn't expect was that Marine and the world government would unite to launch an attack on the Black Flag. The deputy captain was arrested by Marine, and now he is imprisoned in the great undersea prison and pushed into the city. Others, before the Black Army rushed in, the deputy captain ordered them to disperse, hide, and wait for your return. Arlong cried. It is for this reason that he has just moved to East Blue and became the notorious Arlong Pirates. When he was in Black Flag before, although he was a full member, his strength was low and he didn't get Marine's eyes, so he escaped. Leonard, Enel, Faislin, Horty Jones, they are not with you. Jiāng Liú asked. When we fled, we were separated, and now where they are and what they are, I don't know. Arlong knelt there, crying in pain. Jiāng Liú was silent. He stood there without saying a word, but the surrounding atmosphere became low and depressed inexplicably, making everyone nervous. This was an unspeakable aura, and Belmere became more solemn because of it. This man is extraordinary. Even Arlong looks like this when facing him. Who is he? Get up. Letterfield did the right thing. As long as you are okay, we will get together again one day. The Black Flag will come to this world again. Jiāng Liú said in a deep voice. After a pause, he looked at Belmere and Nakagao again. What you do will be punished according to the rules of the Black Flag. This sentence made Arlong's whole body tremble, a trace of fear flashed across his face, and he lowered his head not to say anything. The Murlocs and pirates were silent at this time, but they were shocked in their hearts when they lowered their heads. They vaguely guessed who the man in front of them was. And this made them shocked, excited and terrified. The man who dominated the sea back then, the man who made the entire sea tremble, appeared in front of them again. For 20 years, everyone thought that the other party had already left this world, or had encountered an inexplicable danger and had died. But he unexpectedly appeared again here. It is absolutely forbidden for the Black Flag to treat human civilians in this way. According to the rules, you have lost the identity of the Black Flag. Jiāng Liú quickly said again. This sentence is low and heavy. Arlong shuddered and raised his head abruptly, with tears on his cheeks. We all thought the captain, Kadris, would never come back again. 20 years is too long, too long. Captain, I never dreamed that I would still see you here. I would rather die than lose my identity as a crew member of the Black Flag Pirates. Taking a deep breath, Arlong choked. He suddenly pulled out the long knife of the Murloc behind him, and cut it towards his neck without hesitation. If you can see that you are still alive, it means that you and the Kadris have succeeded in the plan that year. The Black Flag will surely bloom again. I'm satisfied. The light of the knife was dazzling, and this scene was unexpected to everyone. Belmere and Nuauchigao were even more stunned. The man who fell in their orange orchard did nothing. Arlong, who was vicious and vicious, was about to commit suicide. But the next second, the long knife stopped in front of Arlong's neck. Captain. Arlong looked up, tears streaming, shaking constantly. Keep your life. If you perform well next, I will give you a chance to join again. Jiāng Liú said lightly. Arlong shook his whole body and immediately pressed his forehead to the ground. Thank you, Captain. My heart was even more excited, and my heart also burned with dreams. Tell me what happened in the world in the 20 years since I left. Jiāng Liú said softly. Afterwards, he looked at Belmere and Nuauchigao again. Don't be afraid, Arlong is a crew member of my pirate group. Next, he won't do anything to hurt you again. Nuauchi nodded happily, but Belmere's face became more solemn. What kind of guy can even a pirate like Arlong be accepted as a crew member? Arlong didn't dare to say much, and began to tell the story of the past 20 years cautiously. Chapter 235. Advertise here. The gears of the times are always overwhelmed by the vast and irresistible. The Black Flag Pirates left a deep mark in the last era. The existence of Jiāng Liú even changed the trajectory that the world should have gone through. But this kind of change is not continuous. When Jiāng Liú is not there, or his entangled power leaves, the inertial plot power will always find ways to return the twisted road to the writing. See Circle Calendar. In 1510, Marine, the world government, together with some pirates, launched an extermination campaign against the Black Flag Gang. In the 12 years after the opening of the Great Pirate Age, they dispatched personnel to enter the Black Flag and uncovered a news that shocked and puzzled them. That is, the main backbone and cadre members of a group headed by the captain of the Black Flag Pirate Group, Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú, and their flagship Black Pearl disappeared. No one knows where they have gone, and there is no news anywhere in the world. This is different from the other members of the Roger Pirate Group. Although these people have got rid of their pirate identity, they can still be found if they are carefully searched. However, Jiāng Liú and the group seem to have disappeared from this world and went to another place. Therefore, after 12 years of observation, they chose to launch an offense after confirming that the news was accurate. Even if the Black Flag is guarded by a strong man like Letterfield, the multi-party cooperative attack still cannot sustain it. From that day on, Haichi gradually withdrew from the world stage. Even under the strong interference of the world, there is less and less news about the Black Flag from the outside world, and it has disappeared from everyone's field of vision. By this day, there are not many people in the world who know the Black Flag. That banner had already disappeared from everyone's eyes. The glory of the past has completely become the past. Today's era is a new era of rampage called the Great Pirate. New characters, the new pirate group, are rising rapidly. Compared with the previous era, this era is more exciting and grander. So, what are the pirate groups that are active above the sea? Jiāng Liú asked thoughtfully. Now the world famous is New World, the four emperors headed by the Whitebeard Pirates. The Whitebeard Pirates, Red Hair Pirates, Kaido Pirates of Beasts, and Paigum Pirates. After the Black Flag disappeared, they rose to become the new emperor. The new generation of pirates, now the most famous is the Pirates of Spades headed by Fire Fist Ace. They are in East Blue now. Arlong said slowly. Fire Fist Ace. Jiāng Liú was startled slightly. Then there was a smile on his face, which was normal. At this time, Ace had grown up. Now, it should be the moment when he just went to sea. Yes, besides. Arlong paused, then said after looking at Jiāng Liú's face. Marine has established a Shichibukai system, and many powerful pirates are also invited. Among them, what you are familiar with is Moria. And, Jinbei. Jiāng Liú was taken aback. Maria. He could understand Jinbei, but Moria, who had been in his pirate group before, suddenly became Shichibukai. Is the trend of the world really unchangeable? After Moria escaped from New World, he himself pulled up a new pirate group. He heard that it was in the Devil's Delta. In the end, I didn't know what happened, so I became Shichibukai. We have lost contact very much. Arlong sighed. The former companions and the familiar ones are now separated from each other, scattered all over the world. Even if they want to gather together, it is extremely difficult. The scattered black flags are not black flags. The world government will feel a little threatening, but they will not watch them excessively. But if these remaining molecules gather again, they will inevitably take certain actions. Leonard, where's Enel? Jiāng Liú asked again. I don't know, but I think they must be somewhere in the world, waiting for you and the cadres to return. Arlong said. After a pause, he said again. Enel has changed a lot. In 12 years, his strength has progressed rapidly. Not only has he developed Thunder Fruit to the extreme, hockey's practice has not been reduced. Captain, after you leave with the cadres, except for the deputy captain, Enel's strength is slowly becoming the strongest. Find flowers. When he evacuated, he blocked one of the three Admiral Kizaru Pelusolino. Jiāng Liú nodded when he heard the words. Enel does have great potential. Then, he narrowed his eyes again and said in a deep voice. Letterfield, are you sure it's impel down? Arlong nodded his head. I was evacuated because I was taking care of the other crew members. This news was confirmed by my companions. Jiāng Liú's eyes sharpened. It seems that he did not eat the gift I gave him. 12 years later, when Letterfield got older, his physical strength and energy were fading. In this state, even with the support of many young people such as Enel and Moria, he still could not suppress Marine's combat power. 0. The deputy captain said, this is the last gift he missed you. He hid it in a mysterious place, no one knows except him. Arlong sighed. Others in Haichi, do you still know the specific location of which of them? Jiāng Liú asked. I was hiding in a merchant ship. I was injured badly and ended up in East Blue. For 8 years, I have been trying to find a way to return to the sea. However, none of my crew members are familiar with the sea, and my strength is insufficient. Arlong said this, gritted his teeth and blamed himself. Sorry, Captain, we may not even have the strength to enter the Grand Line now. Jiāng Liú was silent. After a while, he patted the other person on the shoulder and said with a smile. Nothing is a problem, we will enter the sea again. My former companions will reunite one by one. Arlong nodded his head. He knew very well that the former Black Flag was also gathered by the captain, from 1 to 100, one by one, and finally became the Overlord pirate group that dominated the New World. Now, it's just a new start. Then, as time passed, Arlong's group, under the guidance of Jiāng Liú, began to repair the ship. They must hurry up and set sail again. 10,000. Chapter 236. Advertise here. At the port of Kokasia village, the fish people seem to be very busy going back and forth, and there are also people in the village helping out. They wished that the ship would get better soon, and then sent away the group of evil spirits in front of them. Although I don't know why Arlong and the Murlocs suddenly become better for them. But there is no doubt that no one wants to stay with this group of people. That young, handsome tall young man, he didn't know him, he just heard that the older generation in the village sometimes talked about him, as if he had seen him in the newspaper. But the guy who can make Arlong bow his head is obviously also terrible. It was Nuochigao, who actually played well with this young man. Arlong said that Nami has the talent to be a navigator, so I want to use her power to go to the depths of the sea. Jiāng Liú said with a smile. HMPH, that guy cheated you, he must be for treasure, money. Nuochi said loudly. Haha, if Nami comes back, we won't ask for a cent for the money she gets. Jiāng Liú burst out laughing. Arlong lowered his head and didn't dare to say anything, just silently directing his crew to repair the ship. At this moment, his heart is already filled with excitement and excitement. The captain is back. The man who used to be the number one in the world once again appeared in front of him. 20 years have passed, he has become mature and grown up, but the captain is still the same as he was then, and he has not changed in the slightest. He is still young and strong. Marine, world government, and the pirates who joined that operation back then, if you know that the captain is back and the black flag is back, I'm very curious about your expressions. Everything we lose, we will get it back again. Arlong said cruelly in his heart. Leonard, Enel, where are you guys now? Soon, he thought again. They used to gather together and live exciting, adventurous, and happy days every day, but after separation, they have not seen them for many years. Even the red-haired shanks of the four emperors at this time had been bullied by them. In the world at this moment, I don't know that the once overlord of the sea has returned. He has traveled from the past era to the present. Naval headquarters, Marineford. Sengoku frowned, looked at the reward order in front of him, and then raised his head to look at the man with the Chinese character face opposite. This kid, don't you say that he will become a good marine. Garp paused while eating the donuts, then made a haha. I feel very distressed when you mention this. Don't think that everyone doesn't know, Huaquan Ace is your grandson, Garp. Sengoku suppressed his anger. In just 1 month after his debut, he stirred up wind and rain in East Blue, and the bounty jumped to 35 million Baileys. There is no doubt that this young pirate is a guy with great potential and will bring great trouble to Marine. Catch him back. What are you worried about? Do you dignified Sengoku, you still care about a boy with a reward of 30 million. Garp said indifferently, but in his mind, it was very complicated at this time. After all, you are on the same path as your father back then, Ace. Sengoku rolled his eyes, then patted the reward order on the table, pointing to the cowboy hat on it, and the boy with a face of Madara said, the question is, do I care or not? This guy is your grandson, and he's a pirate. Quote. It's difficult, you know. Garp shrugged. What to do, just do it. Sengoku shook his head and sighed. The black flag and the black restricted area have been solved, and there is another 4 emperors, and now there is another Fire Fist Ace. It's really endless. Hearing these words, Garp's expression suddenly became serious, and he said solemnly, Sengoku, what happened back then is not over yet. Leadfield was arrested, but the other remnants of the black flag still exist all over the world. They are incognito and are huge hidden dangers. It can be said that although we destroyed their lair, we did not hurt their roots. After a pause, Garp said again. Also, where did the other people in Haichi go? Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú, that man, is he alive or dead now? Where did he go with a group of cadres with the black flag? Sengoku's expression also became serious, and fell silent. He shook his head. I don't know. The World Government CP organization, Marine's informant, has been looking for them for nearly 20 years, but there is still no news. This group of people seems to have suddenly disappeared from the world, there is no clue at all. Garp sighed suddenly and looked at Sengoku. I have a hunch, they might be coming back. This sentence made Sengoku's complexion extremely solemn. If it happens, it would be too much trouble. Sighing lightly, Sengoku shook his head. Both fell silent and looked out the window. The sea breeze was blowing gently, and in the inner bay of Marineford, warships entered and exited, which was very lively and prosperous. Time passed, and it was 3 days in a blink of an eye. At the port of Kokoja village, Arlong's boat was finally repaired, and the villagers were very generous and sent them a lot of food reserves. Arlong looked awkward and bowed and bent over to express his gratitude to the villagers. The villagers looked equally embarrassed, some were nervous, some were afraid, and some were unbelievable. Unexpectedly, Arlong looks like he is older than you, but in front of you, he is so respectful. Nuojao said in amazement. Back then, he was just a trainee crew member who had just joined on my ship. Later he performed well and he became regular with his friends. After a pause, Jiāng Liú looked at Arlong and smiled. I personally promoted him and told him that he was a full crew member. Nuochigao blinked. But when you look at it, it's not too old, why does it sound like his elders? This is very complicated. In a sense, I am indeed his elder. Jiāng Liú said. Then, his gaze crossed the sea and looked into the distance, a small black spot appeared. Someone is coming in a boat. Nu Aochigao followed his gaze, and soon his face became surprised. It's Nami. Nami is back. Her cry made the villagers excited, and they all ran over, ignoring Arlong's thanks. Jiāng Liú also stood up and looked at the black spot that was getting closer and closer. The ship is a sailing ship, and there is only one figure on it, with orange-red hair and twinkling eyes, making it very clever. At this time, looking towards the port, he looked at the port with a puzzled and surprised expression. Chapter 237. Advertise here. Since the arrival of the Arlong pirates, Nami has never seen such a scene in Kokoja village. On weekdays, most people stay in their own homes, close their doors, and will not take the initiative to go out except for necessary things. But today, obviously different from the past, the villagers have all come out, and even not far from them are the vicious pirates. However, what she had remembered did not happen. The fierce pirate turned out to be polite. I stayed very harmoniously with the villagers and looked towards her. In the end, what happened? When she stopped in the port, with a puzzled expression, she looked at Nu Aochigao and Belmir. Both of them rushed over and hugged her tightly in their arms. Nami, it's over. Nu Aochigao said loudly. Nami trembled all over, wondering, what's over? You won't have to go outside to make money for us anymore, and you won't have to run around anymore. The captain of Arlong is here, he is in charge of us. Nu Aochi said vigorously. Nami was stunned, then looked at the tall man aside. The latter is very gentle, nodding to him friendly. Hello, Nami. What happened? Nami said blankly. She only went out for a while, and when she came back, she was shocked to find that everything had changed. Later, Nami was pulled over by the people in the village. After some recounting, she looked at Jiāng Liú in surprise. This man turned out to be the captain of Arlong. In other words, is he also a pirate? I can't imagine that such a handsome man is also a pirate. After Nu Aochigao heard it, he nodded heavily. Who said no? However, he seems to be completely different from the pirates we have seen. Nami thought about it. However, you never have to go out to the dangerous sea anymore. We can live with peace of mind in the future. Nu Aochigao said happily. Nami nodded, but she felt a little lost in her heart. Suddenly, the life he faced changed. The fierce Arlong group suddenly changed their temperament, which made her feel a little unreal. After a while, Nami walked towards Arlong. When she stood in front of Arlong, the latter held both hands and looked at her suspiciously. What are you doing, little girl? You are free. That guy is really your captain? Nami asked. The black line on Arlong's head. It's so rude to you, that's my captain. Nami was very interested. It's funny that a guy like you has a captain and respects him so much. What do you know? It's impossible for a little guy like you to know the greatness of the captain. After a pause, Arlong said in a deep voice. He is the overlord of the sea. Nami was taken aback, and looked aside in surprise. Jiāng Liú, who was talking and laughing with Nu Aochigao. Just kidding, Lord of the Sea. I know that Roger, the pirate king, conquered the sea. Now there are many dangerous, powerful pirates on the sea, but I can't see any dangerous places at all. Arlong sneered. Only in a sea like East Blue, how wide can you see? You go out to raise money, I'm afraid it's not far from where you arrive, right? Even the little East Blue, a little guy like you, can't finish it, let alone the whole world. After a pause, he said coldly. The captain is a man standing at the top of the world. Nami blinked and she looked at Jiāng Liú again. Is the man standing at the top of the world so approachable? She said a few words to the other party, and she felt like a gentleman-like noble, with a very unique temperament. Compared with your captain, you are really crude and mean. Nami said unceremoniously. Arlong was angry, clenched his fists, but released them quickly, and sneered again. A little guy like you, short-sighted, there are so many cruel, ferocious, and despicable guys in the world than me. For other pirates, do you think Kokoja village can exist for so long? Do you think that the people on the island will not have a death, all alive intact? Nami was silent after hearing this. Although she was young, she had gone to sea many times and encountered many dangers. She knew the cruelty of those pirates very well. In comparison, Arlong, who just asks for money, is much better. Too lazy to talk to you. Arlong turned around. Nami stood there, but his eyes flickered. The man standing on the top of the world, the vast and boundless world, is East Blue just a small area. There was expectant light in her eyes. In the evening of this day, Jiāng Liú, Nu Aochigao, and Nami sat on the shore, watching the orange-red sunset, enjoying a moment of silence. Arlong's ship has been repaired and will leave early tomorrow morning. Jiāng Liú, is the outside world really big? Nu Aochigao asked suddenly. Of course, compared to Koko West Village, the sea is boundless and vast. Jiāng Liú smiled and said, I really want to check it out. Nu Aochigao said with a sigh. Large but dangerous. Jiāng Liú said. Nami hugged his knees and sat there without saying a word. Or, when you leave tomorrow, take Nami. Nu Aochigao said suddenly. Jiāng Liú was startled, and Nami next to him was shocked, and then looked at Nu Aochigao incredibly. What are you doing? Didn't you just say today that we can live comfortably together? Now, suddenly let me go with him. A mature smile appeared on Nakigao's face. I can see it all, Nami. You have a dream since you were a child. Don't you often say, do you want to draw a drawing of the entire sea? Do you make a chart of your own? If you have a dream, you should realize it. After a pause, she looked at Jiāng Liú again. Jiāng Liú is a very reliable guy, he will definitely protect you. Right. Jiāng Liú was taken aback, then looked at Nami, smiled and said, if I want to, I can take Nami to travel for a while. Look, he agreed. Nuoji laughed loudly. Nami was in a state of confusion. Compared to her previous trips alone, it was obviously safer to follow Jiāng Liú. I have to think about it. In a blink of an eye, one night passed. It was just dawn the next day. Everything was ready for Arlong's boat. Jiāng Liú boarded the bow and frowned as he looked at the small boat, a little uncomfortable. It can be seen that you have had a very desolate life in recent years. Arlong was embarrassed. Of course, no comparison with the Black Pearl, Captain. Jiāng Liú sighed, then stood in the bow position habitually. Let's go. It's time for me to look at the world 20 years from now. Chapter 238. Advertise here. The canvas was pulled up, and under the sea breeze, Arlong's boat suddenly began to tremble, as if he could not restrain his heart toward the sea. The anchor Karara sounded, and Arlong clutched the rudder, his eyes drifting backwards from time to time. Is that little girl Nami not here yet? He shouted impatiently. As soon as the voice fell, a little girl with orange hair in the port hurried over. Belmir and Nuochigao followed, all three of them looked anxious. Sorry I'm late. Nami came to the front of the boat and said breathlessly. Xiaoba smiled sullenly, jumped off the boat and helped Nami onto the boat. Arlong, let's go. At this time, all the villagers in the village also walked out and rushed towards the port. They came to see Nami off, also to confirm whether the Arlong group really left. You must take care of yourself. Nami, if something goes wrong, come back. Be sure to think of us. Go and be brave to fulfill your dream. The voices of the villagers came in twos and threes and passed into Nami's ears, making her eyes red and tears rolling in her eyes. Jiāng Liú smiled and watched from the side, but he had no feelings about this scene. After the ship was far away, Nami stopped crying and glanced at Jiāng Liú. He stayed quietly. The other Murlocs on the ship looked at her from time to time and did not speak aloud. The atmosphere seemed a little weird. Arlong looked at Jiāng Liú's back from time to time without knowing what he was thinking. Nami. Suddenly, Jiāng Liú, standing on the bow of the ship, called out. Nami raised his head and looked at Jiāng Liú suspiciously. On this ship full of Murlocs, there is only Jiāng Liú, a human being. Next, where are we going? Jiāng Liú asked. Arlong knows nothing about sailing. Jiāng Liú knows a little, but he is also not very professional. He is not a talented person. Where to go? Nami blinked, a little startled. She's not a little girl who doesn't understand anything. This kind of problem is usually not for the little guy who has the qualifications like her, who just got on the boat. Yes, where to go? Jiāng Liú asked with a smile. Arlong raised his head and glanced, but he didn't interrupt. He had no right to interrupt in front of Jiāng Liú. Really? Do you really want me to say it? Nami hesitated. Jiāng Liú nodded. Tell me, now you are also a member here. Nami looked at Jiāng Liú, then at Arlong's face, then his eyes rolled. He smiled and said, I think I should drive west. Jiāng Liú smiled. Then I will listen to you. However, our goal is the Grand Line. When you arrive at the next stop, you have to pay attention. Nami nodded heavily, feeling a little surprised. He didn't expect that the other party would really listen to him. At the same time, she also secretly breathed a sigh of relief, suddenly feeling less nervous, and the atmosphere on the ship was not so embarrassing. At the very least, there is still a human looking normal on board. Arlong, head west, Jiāng Liú said. The latter responded quickly and adjusted his position. 3 days later, the pirate ship stopped on a small island. Orange Town, this is the place I always wanted to come. Nami said excitedly. Don't tell me, this is the island occupied by Buggy the Clown. Arlong's face turned dark, and he said in a deep voice. Hey, you know that there is Buggy the Clown here. I listened to my previous colleagues. No, my friend said, the Buggy Pirates has a lot of treasures. Maybe we can get some over. Nami grinned. How rich can that guy be? Arlong grumbled. They are all guys of the same era, except for Shanks, many of them have disappeared. It should be better than you. The supplies on board are not enough. Nami sneered. Arlong fell silent. Jiāng Liú laughed loudly behind him. When Nami first joined, he had some scruples, but as time passed, he gradually discovered that Arlong, who was originally fierce, also had a cute side. For her who had already joined the pirate group, she would no longer speak harshly or practice her hands, but she actually showed another face, which made her more and more adept. As a pirate, you are really miserable. Nami once again lion majesty. Arlong was shocked, his face gloomy. You know how dangerous the outside world is. Hee. Nami smiled right. Everyone disembarked and walked towards the island. But in a moment, I saw Buggy the Clown. At this time, the Buggy group was gathering together to play. There was a meeting, some singing and some performing a circus. It was a lively scene. This guy really enjoys it. Arlong sneered. Do you know him? Quote. Nami saw that something was wrong, and asked suspiciously. We have had many wars with them. Arlong said. Then he strode out and walked directly into the crowd. Buggy. With a loud shout, the Buggy pirate group that was holding a banquet immediately calmed down, and the pirates next to him recognized him and opened their mouths immediately. Arlong Murloc. Captain Buggy. It's Arlong the Murloc with a higher bounty than you. Buggy, who was sitting in the innermost position, immediately sat up and looked at Arlong with fire in his eyes. Long time no see, Arlong, what are you doing here? There is no contradiction between me and you. Arlong smiled. I'm here to borrow something from you. Buggy sneered after hearing this. Lousy doesn't need to borrow anything from you. Let's get out of here. Don't forget the feud between you and me. The pirates blinked, watching the confrontation between the two big brothers, secretly guessing in their hearts what feuds exist between the two. Of Zhao's. It's up to you, Buggy. It's my captain. I want to come here to find you. Arlong sneered again. After Buggy heard it, he carefully confirmed it again, and then laughed. Are you kidding me? Your captain. What captain do you have? But after talking about this, he suddenly changed color in horror. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and a figure suddenly appeared in his mind, and even his voice trembled. Open. Are you kidding me? That guy, hasn't it been a long time since you have appeared? Even your previous pirate group, even the Black Flag. Arlong smiled and said lightly. Captain, he's back. A bland word made Buggy tremble all over, and he couldn't even speak for a while. Where is he? Arlong stepped away, revealing the tall figure standing not far away. Right here. Chapter 239. Advertise here. Tall, burly, with two knives slung around his waist, the face Buggy had remembered was just like that, once again appeared in front of him. You. Compared to the appearance in the memory, the man in front of him has not changed at all, and because of this, Buggy's heart is even more shocked. How can this be? Yes, how could it be possible that someone has not changed at all after 20 years? What shocked him even more was that the man in front of him, after disappearing for 20 years, appeared again. Shocking, incredible, and deep fear. This is almost a feeling engraved in his instinct. Even Buggy at this moment is already a mature pirate, growing in age, but when the shadow of the teenager emerged, his whole person was trembling violently. Jiāng Liú, Buggy said with a trembling. The whole person was stunned. You have changed a lot, Buggy. Jiāng Liú stepped, came to Buggy, and looked down. Why are you here? Buggy was nervous. I am also very puzzled, but fate is so bizarre. Jiāng Liú smiled. I will give whatever you want. Buggy said loudly without hesitation, and then he bent his waist. It has been 20 years since you disappeared. Every day you are away, I miss you. It is a great loss to not have you in the world. Such flattery made Jiāng Liú laugh. It's just a lack of supplies, you seem to have changed a lot. Such words made Buggy breathe a sigh of relief. Seeing the other's attitude and expression, he didn't take action against himself, so he quickly agreed. Aside Nami looked at this scene in surprise, and observed the young man again. The other party did nothing. The famous Buggy pirate just saw the other party, just like this. In the afternoon that day, the Arlong pirate ship departed. Buggy followed, nodding and bowing to send off. Don't do too much bad things, Roger was not like this back then. Before leaving, Jiāng Liú said lightly. Listen to you, I must listen to you. Buggy nodded immediately. Then, after he watched the ship go away, his expression on his face quickly changed, revealing a painful look. Damn it, Lousy has run out of supplies for more than half a year, and has lost a permanent pointer. But it's great to survive. After the meat pain, Buggy only felt extremely grateful and shocked. In this era, it is completely unexpected for him to be able to see a big person like the other party, and I am afraid it is also unimaginable in the world. The once overlord of the sea, the man who was ranked number 1 in the world, he came back again, standing in front of him alive like that. The other party, compared with the past, there is no change. It's terrible, I don't know how much shock it will cause the world this time. Buggy shuddered and couldn't imagine. Captain Buggy, who is this man, why both you and Arlong treat him so respectfully? The pirate next to him asked suspiciously. He kept holding back this question until he finally couldn't help it. You will know soon. His name will resound all over the world again. Taking a deep breath, Buggy said. After a pause, a smile appeared on his face again. Everyone in the world thought that the legend had disappeared, but they would not have thought that he would appear in front of everyone again. After speaking, Buggy raised his head and looked at the dilapidated, weird ship. When the One Piece King brother Roger was executed and the Black Flag pirates ran away and disappeared in the eyes of everyone, a whole new era came. Whether it is Roger or Jiāng Liú, their reputations are being reduced and weakened. The world ushered in the era of the 4 emperors. But I am afraid that everyone did not expect that the former overlord, he has been alive. He has already begun to appear in people's vision. 7 days later, the Arlong pirate ship was on board. It smells so fragrant. Nami's nose fluttered and exclaimed. It's really delicious, eating too much food from Xiaoba, this kind of aroma is simply too tempting. Jiāng Liú nodded in agreement. Murloc Xiaoba scratched his head awkwardly. I am not a professional chef after all. In front of the crowd, appeared in a huge ship, which was divided into several layers, and the fragrance was transmitted from the ship. East Blue's famous sea restaurant. Let's go up and have a meal. Jiāng Liú. Nami said loudly. She has stayed on the ship for this period of time, except for Jiāng Liú, she has rarely seen other human beings, facing the Murloc face all day long. At first, I felt a little scary, but when I got to the back, I felt numb. No matter how fierce it looks, it has no effect on her anymore. Right on my mind. Jiāng Liú nodded and said. Arlong looked at the pocketbook around his waist, frowned slightly, but soon returned to normal. He is almost unable to support his captain. But how embarrassed to tell the other party about such an embarrassing thing. To be silent is to agree. Soon, the pirate ship approached the restaurant on the sea, and Jiāng Liú's appetite was appetized by the smell of the smell. It can be compared with the level of the chef of Haichi back then. It's a very powerful guy. Jiāng Liú sighed. Several people went to the sea restaurant, coming and going. All kinds of people made Nami's eyes widened, and because of Arlong and other Murlocs, many people were also looking at them. Murlocs are rare in East Blue. Captain. After everyone had just gathered in a table and sat down, Arlong suddenly shouted with a serious face. Jiāng Liú raised his head and looked at each other suspiciously. That guy over there, Arlong whispered, pointing his finger to the cowboy hat man sitting by the window. It's Fire Fist Ace. Recently, a famous newcomer in East Blue. Upon hearing this, Jiāng Liú turned his eyes and immediately looked over. When he saw it clearly, he grinned. That's really fate, I saw him here. Arlong was puzzled by what the captain said, so he continued to introduce him. I heard that he is a Logia Mera Mera fruit-capable person, just like Enel. I am still alone, and founded the Pirates of Spades. It should be recruiting crew members. Jiāng Liú smiled and said to Arlong. Call him here and I will talk to him. Chapter 240. Advertise here. By the window of the restaurant on the sea, a young man with a cowboy hat and Madara's face was eating the fried rice on the table in front of him quietly and gracefully. Next to the fried rice, there is also a bowl of thick soup, exuding a clear fragrance, which greatly increases the appetite. This man is Ace. He didn't go to sea for a long time, but because of Logia Mera Mera Fruit's ability and its own strong strength, he quickly won a good bounty. Now in the pirate circle of East Blue, it can be said very famous. Suddenly, a figure appeared before his eyes. Ace raised his head, looked at each other with a bulging mouth, and swallowed the food with a rolling throat. What's up? My captain wants to see you. Arlong said lightly. He is also observing this newcomer. Vigorous, with a smile and self-confidence on his face, such a temperament is too common in the new pirates, not surprising. Your captain. Ace froze for a moment, then laughed, and he recognized him. It is also a famous pirate in East Blue, named Arlong. After all, pirate groups composed of Murlocs are rare in this sea area. The famous Murloc Arlong also has a captain. I didn't expect it. Ace sighed lightly, but didn't care too much. Instead he continued to eat the rice on the plate with a spoon. After swallowing again, Ace still smiled. I am not interested in the captain of your family. Say hello to him for me. Arlong's face turned cold. There were not many people in this world who could refuse the captain, but there was no such guy in front of him. Fledgling boy, your knowledge is like a frog at the bottom of a well. Dare you to refuse the captain's kindness? Arlong said angrily. Hee. I don't have much interest in your captain, but to you, Arlong the Murloc. Ace put down his spoon, his eyes sharpened, and there was not much food on the plate. I am very upset now. His right hand raised, snapped his fingers, a flame burned, and then he stood up. You affected my meal. Arlong's eyes condensed, he sensed the hostility of the opponent, and made a defensive posture. It doesn't seem to be great over there, Jiāng Liú. Nami said worriedly at this moment. Watch it quietly. Jiāng Liú smiled lightly. Ace in this period is really young and vigorous. If you don't agree, you have to do it. The eyes of the two people by the window collided and sparks burst out. The next second, they both moved violently. Arlong growled and waved his fist. Ace laughed, a flame burned on his right arm, and then collided with Arlong. Fire punch. A blaze of flames quickly increased, wrapped around his arms, forming the appearance of a fist, and swallowed Arlong in the blink of an eye. Boom. There was a dull tremor, and Arlong fell heavily, letting out a suppressed cry of pain. I can't figure out how a guy like you has such a reputation in East Blue. Ace bent over and smiled. Arlong looked ugly, endured the burning pain, then stood up suddenly and punched the opponent. The latter dodged swiftly, and did not counterattack for the time being. The attention of the people nearby was attracted by the place, and they shouted and yelled at each other. The restaurant on the sea is also a special occasion, mostly pirates. This lively scene can naturally ignite the atmosphere of the scene. It's the recent rookie Huaquan Ace and Murloc Arlong. Interesting battle. Guess which one of them can win? People burst out and laughed. The battle between the two quickly spread to the surroundings, the tables were overturned, the floor cracked, and there was an exclamation. Murloc Arlong is obviously at a disadvantage. He was crushed and beaten by Ace. He was seriously injured by a fire punch at the beginning. Arlong is not this guy's opponent. Nami becomes nervous. Jiāng Liú still had a calm expression, and did not see any anxious and worried appearance. After a few more minutes, Arlong flew out again and landed not far from them, and the other Murlocs screamed in fear. Arlong. Ace walked a few steps and was about to attack again, but at this moment, a voice sounded. Enough. Deep. but accompanied by a strong majesty, the noise of the restaurant on the sea suddenly fell silent as soon as the sound came out. Many people don't even understand why they felt their heart trembles when they heard the sound just now, and they couldn't speak for a while. It was as if the spirit was shocked, and it was actually a little dizzy. Captain. Arlong struggled to sit up, his face was blue and purple, and his expression was a little ashamed. Find flowers. It seems that you haven't practiced diligently over the years. Even a newcomer in East Blue can't beat it. Jiāng Liú said lightly. Arlong was even more ashamed, lowered his head and didn't even dare to reply. Ace looked at Arlong at this time, and at Jiāng Liú again, his expression became serious. From this looking young and tall man, he felt a terrible breath, as if at the biological level, he was completely crushed by the opponent. Are you his captain? He asked solemnly. Fire Fist Ace. Jiāng Liú laughed, said the other person's name, and then said another sentence that shocked him. Seeing you is like seeing your father. 0. Ace's pupils contracted and stared at the young man in front of him. My father. Back then, I and him were both enemies and friends. We fought life and death, and we boarded the last island together, and we each made each other. In the end, I was in Logue Town, to send him one last ride. Jiāng Liú spoke softly, his words full of emotion. For him, all this happened not long ago, but for people in this era, 20 years have passed. Ace's whole body was shaken, staring at the man in front of him, and his shock was beyond the reach. Maybe everyone present didn't understand what the other party said, but he knew very well who the father was said by this man. Brother Roger. His father. The man who became the One Piece, even after 20 years of death, is still circulating in the world. Who are you? Ace took a deep breath and said this sentence from his mouth. Arlong stood up swayingly, and said with a sneer, he is someone you can't imagine. At this moment, an elderly pirate in the crowd, looking at Jiāng Liú, suddenly shook his whole body. It's him. No, it's impossible, he has disappeared, how could it be him? He suddenly remembered something, took out a shabby reward order from his arms, looked down, and then he trembled. It's him, it's really him. That man, he is back. Above the sea, the strongest man. 1. Chapter 241. Advertise here. Trembling, fear, tension, and a touch of excitement that is hard to tell, all kinds of weird emotions, all came to the man's heart at this moment. He is an old pirate who is 50 or 60 years old, and has long been abandoned by the times. The era he was in was an era called Black Flag. The sea, ruled by the Black Flag, stands at the top of all the pirates, named Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú. In the First World War in Greenland, Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú defeated Whitebeard, Roger and Kaido, and became the world's most powerful man. After that, he reached the end of the Grand Line and named the legendary island Raftel. Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú became the overlord of the sea, and he created an era that belonged only to him. However, when Roger was executed, the backbone of the Black Flag, everyone on the Black Pearl disappeared inexplicably. As time passed, the Black restricted area was rushed and the Black Flag dissipated. Coupled with the powerful intervention of the world government, the Black Banner was completely wiped out. Today's era is already a new generation, and there are very few people in the world who know the Black Flag. The old pirate never dreamed that he could see each other here. Compared with the face on the bounty, this man is not a bit old, nor has he changed a bit, he is as strong as ever, in a peak state. What will happen in this world? Muttered. The old pirate trembled all over. In the field, Jiāng Liú still looked at Ace calmly. The other party's mind was shaking, and he looked a little trance at this time, and he could understand the other party's mood at the moment. Jiāng Liú did not pay attention to the other party anymore, but greeted Arlong to take a seat. Just at this moment, the meal next to him was on the table, and the one who delivered the meal was a teenager with blonde hair, curly eyebrows, and a black suit. This is your meal, guests. The boy said lightly. After the delivery, he turned around and left. Jiāng Liú smiled slightly, recognizing that the other party was the Sanji from the gang of Straw Hat Pirates in the future. This guy is really rude. Nami grumbled. But when everyone was about to start eating, Ace sat opposite Jiāng Liú with a gloomy face. Hey, kid, no one wants you to sit here. Arlong spoke immediately. What do you know? Ace said in a deep voice, his eyes fixed on Jiāng Liú. The onlookers who saw things calm down, they all dispersed, but they were very curious about the young people who could calm the scene with one sentence. Which way do you mean? Your father. Jiāng Liú smiled slightly. How do you know this? Ace said solemnly. It looks a lot, isn't it? Jiāng Liú raised his eyebrows and said casually. Who are you? Ace asked in a deep voice. This man was too mysterious, and he stood there in a word, unable to even move at that moment, and knew his own life experience. Although neither party directly stated who the man was, they were already very clear. My name is Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú. Jiāng Liú said lightly, not hiding his name. Ace was taken aback, and then said, I haven't heard of it. He had never heard of it, and the name had disappeared for nearly 10 years. Under the cover of the world government, it has become a taboo-like existence, just like Rock's pirate back then. Hee, that's not important, you will soon know who I am. Jiāng Liú laughed. Ace's face changed. He really didn't know who the other party was, but he wanted to know who the other party was. It sounds like it has something to do with that man. I defeated your father and stepped on him to become the strongest in the world. After passing through the obstacles of time and space, I came to the present age, but found that everything I created no longer exists. Jiāng Liú said leisurely, and Ace was shocked by the words and looked at him incredibly. But it's not a big problem, waiting for me to find my ship, my companion. Everything in the past will naturally come back, and the black flag will fly in front of the world again. After a pause, Jiāng Liú's voice echoed. They who fear me will also fall into fear again. Ace trembled and suddenly growled. You said you beat him. That's impossible. Nothing is impossible. They cover everything, but the fact is the fact. No one can change everything that has happened. Jiāng Liú said lightly. Your father's brother, Roger, the world calls him the One Piece. This sentence made Arlong and Nami stare. Is this kid actually Roger's son? Ace looked ugly. I don't believe it, who are you? I am from the same age as him, and the world calls me the Overlord of the Sea. Jiāng Liú smiled faintly. He has conquered the existence of Grand Line, and I am the man who has conquered the entire sea and owns the new world. The understatement made Ace stare at him with wide eyes, still unable to believe it. This is like telling a legend, unbelievable. After a while, he suddenly laughed. You make up stories pretty, but I won't believe them. You said you conquered the sea and defeated him. After a pause, Ace took a deep breath. So, I really want to see how far the man is from the top of the world. Jiāng Liú smiled slightly. You are still far behind. Come on then, let me see if you are bragging. Ace said loudly. I don't know how high the sky is, how dare you challenge the captain? Even if Roger is dead and resurrected, facing the captain, his face is dignified. Arlong sneered from the side. Hee, let's eat first. Jiāng Liú laughed casually and didn't care about the challenge. Since you wounded Arlong, then this meal is up to you. Soon, he said again. Arlong was taken aback, and then he was relieved, but Ace's face changed and he touched his pocket. He is not so rich, the pirate's life is very difficult. The meal was very quiet. Nami occasionally praised the food for a few words, but there was no other voice. After a while, on the dining table, there were only bare plates left. Can you start now? Ace took a deep breath and asked loudly. Go outside. Jiāng Liú smiled faintly. It shouldn't take long. He stood up and walked outside, with Ace closely behind him. That guy will set fire. Is Jiāng Liú really okay? Nami worried. Captain, but the strongest in the world. Arlong said. Chapter 242. Advertise here. Outside the restaurant on the sea, on an empty platform. Jiāng Liú stretched out and looked at the rolling sea in front of him. Small boats also stopped not far away. Just here. Hearing the footsteps behind him, he turned and smiled. Ace's expression was solemn, and he slowly clenched his fists. You said you were the strongest in the world and defeated that man. Let me see how strong you are again. He walked forward, stretched out his right hand, and a touch of flame quickly entangled up, and then half of his body was burning with red flames. Jiāng Liú had a calm expression with a faint smile, not caring about it. Logia Devil Fruit's ability was indeed powerful in the early stage, but after mastering armament hockey, it has been used to counteract it. If his own strength is not outstanding enough, it still poses no threat. Some people around noticed this scene and they all watched it. The Sanji, who was delivering the food, just put the plate down, leaned against the door and lit a cigarette, and saw this scene, and he was immediately taken aback. It's the kid who made the trouble just now. After spitting out a puff of smoke, Sanji Shi looked at it intently. Ace moved quickly, and after a fierce look in his eyes, his figure instantly turned into a flame and rushed up. I never believed that you have that kind of strength. Roaring in his mouth, the flames on his body suddenly collected, condensed in his fist, turned into a huge fist, and bombarded forward. Fire punch. The temperature suddenly rose, and such an attack made Sanjishi take a violent cigarette, and his eyes were shocked. This kid is so strong. But soon, an even more shocking scene appeared. Facing such a blazing blow, the man standing on the opposite side just stretched out a finger indifferently, and let the back push against the flame-shaped fist. Void trembles, the flame seems to be converged by an invisible force, compressed together, it is actually unable to advance. Ace's pupils contracted, and his fire fist felt strong resistance, as if he had hit a mountain. Is it just that? Jiāng Liú said lightly. I will fight you with one finger. Ace looked ugly and his eyes were angry. Let's look down on people less. His fist suddenly retracted, and he ran with strides, his hands were compared to pistols, and he shot quickly. Musket. Suddenly, the banging sound continued one after another. Jiāng Liú pointed out with his finger, a little ignited sprout was blocked from the void, and then fluttered down one after another, floating on the deck and quickly extinguished. Ace's face was solemn, he took a deep breath and waved his big hand. A flame in front of him burned and covered Jiāng Liú. Yan Shang Gang. But when the flame approached Jiāng Liú, it began to hang down strangely and then extinguished, as if it was being pressed down by something. The flame had weight at this moment. Use your strongest strength, Ace. Such juggling is of no use to me. Jiāng Liú said lightly. Damn it. Ace's expression changed slightly, but the next moment, he ran abruptly and quickly approached Jiāng Liú, burning flames above his hands. Shanha. Shiranui. The flame stretched quickly, turning into a spear, and piercing towards Jiāng Liú in a moment. However, in the next second, Jiāng Liú pointed his finger and pointed it precisely at the sword of the flame spear. Boom! The flame was broken into pieces like this, and then, he took another step, already approaching Ace's front. Fast as incredible, fast. Ace didn't even react, the whole person was already frozen there. Is your strength only so little? An indifferent voice rang in his ears, and Ace's whole body shook, and then a circle of fire pillars entangled and soared into the sky. Yan Jia, Yan Zhu. This huge pillar of fire rushed into the sky, making people who saw this scene amazed. However, before Ace's eyes, Jiāng Liú was lost again. His face became ugly and solemn, and the opponent did not show any strength in this battle, but it gave him a tense and powerful pressure. If this is the case, it should be over. Suddenly the sound came from behind, and Ace turned around abruptly, and saw a finger in front of him. Void trembles suddenly at this moment, the finger flicks that softly, Ace's forehead hurts, and the whole person flies out like a sharp arrow. Call out. Even, he himself made a sharp howling in the air. The stubborn smoke from Sanjishi's mouth fell to the ground, his eyes widened, and he watched this scene incredibly. With just one finger, you can flick the guy who can set off flames. What is the origin of this young man? Puff. After a while, I heard the sound of heavy objects falling into the water. I don't know how high the sky is, but I dare to challenge the captain. Arlong walked out, looked at Ace who was falling into the water, and said with a sneer. Nami's face was full of exclamation. She felt that Jiāng Liú hadn't made any effort at all. With just one finger, she had defeated the fire fist Ace that was able to sling Arlong. Go and save him, Arlong. Seeing entering the water, struggling, his face was full of shock and confusion. Ace, Jiāng Liú suddenly said. Save him. Arlong was taken aback. Go, Jiāng Liú said. The latter did not hesitate, and jumped directly off the boat, and then a splash of water rang in the sea, and then Ace was pulled into the boat and spit out water. Yes, I'm saved. He panted violently, but still stared at Jiāng Liú. My elementalization has no effect on you. Yes, the moment he was flicked by the opponent's finger, he activated the elementalization, however, there was no effect at all, and he was still knocked out by one finger. This is simply impossible, it is ridiculous. Logia, it's not invincible. Facing the other party's question, Jiāng Liú said lightly. We should go too. After the words were dropped, he turned and left. Arlong glanced at Ace and sneered. The world you see, and what the captain sees, are basically two worlds. The positions where you stand are completely different. You know, the kid who sits on the well and watches the sky. Ace sat there, falling silent. Before today, he would never believe that someone could easily defeat himself with just one finger. The gap between the two sides is simply too big. Suddenly, Jiāng Liú stopped in his footsteps and turned his head to look at him again. Ace. Ace raised his head and looked at each other with complicated eyes. Want to beat me? Fulfill your father's unfulfilled wish. Jiāng Liú grinned. Ace's pupils contracted and his whole body was shaken. Chapter 243. Advertise here. If you want, just follow me. I can give you a chance. Jiāng Liú's voice slowly floated in the air, and when Ace reacted, he had already seen the other party boarding the boat. He rubbed the purple cyan, aching brows, took a deep breath and stood up abruptly. I'm not convinced yet. The strength you have shown can't be recognized by me. Immediately afterwards, Ace ran with strides, got on his own small sailing boat, and chased after Jiāng Liú and others. The disturbance in the restaurant on the sea soon subsided. Sanji picked up the cigarette that fell on the ground and smoked it again. His eyes fluctuated, and he was always thinking of Ace and Jiāng Liú in his mind. Always see some weird things. The outside world should be very exciting. All blue, it must also exist. There was a gleam in his eyes, an expression of expectation. Sanji, what are you doing? The guests have been waiting for a long time, please hurry up. At this moment, Redfoot Zepp ran out and pulled him back. Don't give me a walk at work, you fellow. You have some enthusiasm for work anyway. Zepp shouted loudly. I see, old man. Sanji Shi murmured impatiently. He turned and looked at the sea again. The two ships, one large and one small, had turned into black spots, flashed again, and disappeared before his eyes. Half a day later, on the deck of the Arlong pirate ship. I can give you a chance to beat me. From today, you will be by my side. I will teach you to become stronger, and at the same time, you can launch sneak attacks and attacks on me at any time. You can use all the methods you think to defeat me. Jiāng Liú looked at the boy in front of him and said with a smile. Teach me to become stronger. Ace was startled, his eyes sharpened. This is what you said. Jiāng Liú laughed loudly. If a gentleman says a word, it's hard to chase a horse. What Jiāng Liú said, naturally count. Such an answer shocked Ace's heart. He felt a little strange at the moment. Did the man in front of him really defeat his father, elder brother Roger? Obviously the other party is so young, looks even similar to himself. So, Ace stayed on this boat like this. Whether it is Arlong, Nami, Xiaoba and others, they will see every day, this kid who will set off flames, slowly attacking Jiāng Liú in spirit. At first it was front, but soon it turned into a back attack. However, Even so, Jiāng Liú's back seemed to have eyes long, accurately avoiding every attack from the opponent. This shocking premonition shocked Ace's heart and was extremely puzzled. Where is he strong? Why does it feel mediocre? During the meal, Ace launched an attack, but Jiāng Liú slapped him casually on the deck. He couldn't stand up for a long time, and he lost his breath. Even when going to the toilet, Ace would bang his head against the broken plank, but was kicked into the pit by Jiāng Liú, embarrassed. Fix the door. Afterwards, Jiāng Liú clapped his hands and turned to leave. This relaxed and casual picture shows an insurmountable gap, and it makes Ace more aware of his weakness and the unfathomableness of the other party. Perhaps he is not bragging. No, it's impossible, that man, but one piece. It's just that, he can never beat him. Ace is in such affirmation and denial every day. He still doesn't believe that Jiāng Liú defeated Roger. Compared with the two, the fame in this era is simply the difference between heaven and earth. Marine, the world government did not cover up everything about Roger, because the One Piece is dead, but Jiāng Liú cannot tell whether he is alive. They can only do their best to suppress their influence to the lowest level and prevent the opponent from reappearing one day. 3 days later, Naval Headquarters, Marineford. A simple photo was placed on Sengoku's desk with Garp sitting opposite. Both of them fell silent, their faces as solemn as dripping water. Your hunch is true, Garp. After a while, Sengoku sighed and said solemnly. I did not mean it. Garp touched his head and sighed too. He actually appeared, and he appeared from East Blue. Sengoku said solemnly. What surprised me more is why he got entangled with your grandson. Didn't you adopt Ace? An embarrassment appeared on Garp's face. I don't know either. It should be impossible for two people like this to get together. As he said, he was even more distressed, holding his head in both hands, his expression tangled. Quote. You must be hiding something from me, Garp. Quote. Sengoku stared at his old friend and said in a deep voice. No, Garp said immediately. HMPH, whether it is there or not, it is not as serious as this matter. This is the most critical incident. Sengoku sighed. In the past 20 years, the things that I worried about day and night finally happened. He slowly raised his head and looked into the distance, his expression increasingly solemn. I just don't know, where is his ship and the group of people who disappeared with him? Garp scratched his head and couldn't help muttering, perhaps, they are all alive. Sengoku turned dark and covered his forehead with a headache. This time, he also had a hunch, and what the guy Garp said will probably be fulfilled soon. Hurry up and think about how to deal with it. Garp looked ugly. It's a headache. East Blue, Arlong's pirate ship. Give up, boy, if you know the deeds of the captain, now Ike Zhao Zhao would not be so courageous and confident. Arlong said mockingly. There is no legend of him in the world, I suspect you are lying to me. Ace sneered. You know what a shit. That's because the world government, Marine, has already feared him to the extreme, and dare not let the captain's name continue to spread in the world. They covered everything and erased the black flag. Arlong's expression changed, and he said seriously and coldly. This is what your father, brother One Piece Roger, didn't do. Ace's complexion changed, and he sat cross-legged, his complexion dignified. He looked ahead again, the tall figure man standing on the bow of the boat. Until now, I haven't seen him make a knife. There was a memory on Arlong's face. This world, someone worthy of his sword. Running out. Chapter 244. There are not many people worthy of his sword. This faint word tells the man's strength, and in this strength, there is a trace of loneliness and loneliness. Ace sat there, falling silent. Jiāng Liú's strength is beyond his comprehension. The two sides seem to be in two different dimensions, and the world they see is very different. In the past few days, he tried many methods, but he couldn't do anything with this man. Ace really couldn't think of any other way he could use it. The pirate ship drove forward, and Ace got up and came to the back of Jiāng Liú. Where is this ship going? Jiāng Liú turned around with a smile on his face, but there was a touch of awe-inspiring and fierceness in his eyes. Go and get back everything that others have taken in the past 20 years. Ace was silent. I don't know what peak you have reached, nor do I understand your past. But you said, you will teach me to become stronger. After a pause, Ace said seriously. Then I will surpass you. Looking at this young face, full of vigor and enthusiasm, Jiāng Liú grinned. I like confident young people. I like to be ambitious too. Beyond me, but the most difficult thing in this world. There is no feeling of pride or arrogance. Jiāng Liú seems to be taken for granted when such words are said. You want to surpass me, then there is too much to learn. Are you ready, Ace? Ace looked solemn and took a deep breath. It's done. I'm looking forward to it. What can you do to change me? Ha 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 ha. Jiāng Liú burst out laughing. If you want to surpass me, first of all, you have to start with hockey. Such words made Ace stunned. It was the first time he heard about something like hockey. Garp did not include this kind of knowledge in his training. More, it is to put him and Luffy in the wild, so that they can fend for themselves and develop their strong survival instincts. This training method may not become stronger immediately, but it will have a significant impact in the long-term survival environment in the future. What is hockey? Ace wondered. Hockey is a gifted human being. After being tempered by life and death, he can master a survival instinct. It is divided into armed colors, seeing and hearing colors, armed colors, and conquerors. Each color of hockey has its own unique functions and abilities. Jiāng Liú was not impatient, and chuckled lightly to tell the other party. In the original book, his impression of Ace can be said to be the best. It was just his fate that made him sigh for a long time. Among them, the armed color can be entangled with weapons, and on the body, it can produce offensive and defensive effects, and it has obvious restraint effects on devil fruit. Especially, it can deal with Logia-capable people. Seeing and hearing the color, you can foresee the next attack, and improve the human body's perception. Conquerors. At this point, Jiāng Liú's face became solemn. This kind of ability is called the King's Aptitude, and only one of 10,000 people can awaken. As for his method of use, I still learned from the battle with your father's brother Roger. Hearing this, Ace was stunned. He looked at the young man in front of him, still unable to believe that the other party could really fight one piece. You want to climb into the world's strong forest, this conqueror's hockey is the prerequisite you must have. Jiāng Liú said again. Hockey. Ace murmured slowly, his expression dignified. He could imagine that this conqueror's hockey, it would be extremely difficult to master them. In addition, it is the development of devil fruit, Mara fruit in your body. Compared to Marine's 3 Admiral, your current development of Mara fruit is pitiful. The 3 boys back then, I am afraid that now they can use the power of the fruit to change a large area. Especially lava fruit, Sakazuki, code-named Akainu, is even more threatening to you. Jiāng Liú sighed. Marine 3 Admiral. Ace was stunned. Yes, you may be destined to die under one of them. Jiāng Liú said. Such a sentence silenced Ace. After a while, he suddenly laughed. I do not believe. Yes, how could he believe such a thing? It's too ridiculous. It doesn't matter if you don't believe it, as long as you are strong enough, it is not impossible to change your destiny. Jiāng Liú smiled. 20 years ago, I changed the world. 20 years later, I am curious as to where you will go. Ace looked at the young man in front of him with a complex expression. He can naturally feel that the other party has no malicious intent towards him. Even, I decided to help myself and teach myself to become stronger. I'm curious, what happened to you with that man? After a while, Ace asked in a deep voice. That's a long story. Jiāng Liú smiled. However, if you want to hear, I can also tell you this story. Ace's expression became solemn and serious, and he stood beside Jiāng Liú, waiting for the other person to tell him. Arlong stood on the other side, looking at the 2 men, with some envy in Ace's eyes. This look, he could naturally see that the captain valued this kid very much, and even deliberately wanted to train him. My first meeting with Roger was at Sky Island. A long voice sounded slowly, and Ace's eyes widened and his mouth widened. You said Sky Island, what is that? Floating on the island of Tianshan, an unseen kid. Arlong interrupted. Ace was shocked. Jiāng Liú smiled slightly and began to talk about what happened 20 years ago, which was very far away to others, but to him, it was yesterday. As time passed slowly, Ace's expression changed. As the story entered his ears, he became more and more respectful of the man in front of him. Obviously he was only a few years older than himself, but he was able to do such a great thing. He defeated the man, the last island in the end, and named it Raftel, becoming the overlord of the sea. It's amazing. Until Logue Town, I will see Roger off. Initiated today, this era called the Great Pirate. We all know that in this era, the general trend is like waves after waves. When they accumulate to the highest point, they will trigger a big tsunami. Using the earth-shaking power. Jiāng Liú smiled slightly. At that time, the world will be changed. Chapter 245. Advertise here. The conversation with Jiāng Liú made Ace amazed in his heart, and was deeply impressed by the courage and greatness of the other party. If everything the other party said is true, then there is no doubt that this man is a powerful existence surpassing his father. After listening to it, Ace had a hunch that everything the other party said was not a false structure. In other words, all of this really exists. The black flag is true. Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú, the overlord of the sea, was even more real, standing in front of him. Next, I will continue to sharpen your body and awaken your body armament hockey. This is a difficult and painful process, but if it is you, I believe it will be completed soon. Jiāng Liú's voice came, and Ace recovered and nodded solemnly. The strongest man in the world will teach himself, this is something he can't imagine. Then please, Ace said solemnly. Jiāng Liú smiled slightly. This is the first time the other party has a gentle attitude in recent days. Obviously, things are moving in a good direction. He stretched out his hand, and then pointed out a finger. You have to pay attention. Next, a lot of weight will fall on you. What you have to do is to get acquainted with him, master it, and improve your physical strength. With that, Jiāng Liú put a finger on Ace's clothes. In an instant, Ace's face changed wildly, and he only felt that the whole person seemed to be carrying a mountain on his back, and it actually became heavier several times. How is this going? He looked up hard and asked. Break your limits and surpass your physical stamina, you will feel the presence of hockey. Jiāng Liú said lightly. If you think it is not heavy enough, I will help you improve again. Ace's face changed, and he shook his head quickly. Already, after, enough. He turned slowly, then used all his strength to get used to this weight and tried to make exercise movements. But there is no doubt that every blow is a torture and consumption of his physical energy, making him tremble all over, and sweat is flowing out quickly. This is the easiest, most direct, and fastest way to practice I can think of, Ace. Try hard. Jiāng Liú walked forward with a smile and kicked the opponent's ass. Ace screamed, fell on the deck, got up to fight back, but was kicked to the ground again. Ha 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 ha. Jiāng Liú burst out laughing. You are way behind. Ace's face was pale, he clenched his fists and turned around, practicing hard. Time passed slowly, and another half-month passed in a blink of an eye. Arlong's ship has already sailed to the sea near Lobe Town. I'm leaving East Blue, Jiāng Liú said softly, his eyes were looking at the black spot not far away, his eyes flickering. I want to check it out, Ace said suddenly, his expression complex and serious. Okay, you are indeed the one we should visit there. Jiāng Liú nodded and said. The boat quickly turned and headed towards Lobe Town. After a while, Arlong's ship docked at the port of Lobe Town. Ace's eyes were complicated, looking at the secluded harbor, not knowing what he was thinking. At this time, Arlong was all shocked, looking at the huge black ship that was also quietly leaning against the harbor not far away, and he couldn't tell for a long time. His pupils contracted and he opened his mouth wide to say something, but got stuck there. Ship, captain. After a long time, Arlong finally called out. A smile appeared on Jiāng Liú's face, looking at the huge ship in front of him, the whole body was pitch black, like a black jewel, and the flag flying on the mast hunted and trembled. That is a flag that is purely black. It stands quietly like that, but it exudes unspeakable depth and depression. What a huge ship. Ace turned his head at this time and petrified there too. In East Blue, such a boat is not common, and it is very shocking. The huge black ship docked there, and there was no one on it and no sound was heard. Our ship, Arlong screamed. This ship, which he hadn't seen for 20 years, suddenly appeared in front of him at this moment, making him tremble all over, tears welling from his eyes. At the same time, there was a sudden flapping sound from the mast of the black giant ship, and a huge dragon appeared on the mast, looking down. After seeing Jiāng Liú, the dragon let out a roar of surprise. Wow! The black ship was shaking slightly at this moment. Finally meet again. There was a clear, cheerful voice in Jiāng Liú's ear. This is the ship spirit of the Black Pearl. Yeah, finally meet again. Black Pearl. Jiāng Liú grinned. Long time no see, Millennium Dragon. Find flowers. He raised his head again and waved to the dragon on the mast. Ace stood there in shock at the moment, staring at the huge dragon blankly. It was the first time he saw this creature, not far from Nami, and the expressions of the fish people were the same. Our ship, this is the Black Pearl, our ship. Arlong yelled excitedly. The ship has appeared. Where are the cadres? Brother Valdo, Cyrus, Karma, Sebastian, Nachan, Shi. Where are they all? Qianlong standing on the mast, hearing Arlong's words, grabbed his right hand, raised a finger, screamed in a low voice, and pointed to the island. Are they all in Lobe Town? Arlong was shocked and surprised. Jiāng Liú also showed a smile on his face, but the brief separation gave everyone a strange feeling. The outside world has changed a lot for 20 years. 0. I just don't know, how do other people on the boat feel at this moment? Go and see, Jiāng Liú suddenly said, then looked at Ace again. Take you to see where Roger left, and by the way, meet my companions. Ace's body was shocked. At this time, the curiosity of Jiāng Liú's companions became heavier. The companions of the Overlord of the Sea are probably also some pretty tough guys. He is very curious and looking forward to it. The group quickly got off the boat and walked towards Lobe Town. Go to the execution stand. After entering the street, Jiāng Liú said directly. He has a strong feeling that the people of the Black Flag are in the execution platform at the moment. At the same time, execute the penalty platform park. 20 years have already turned this place into an empty area, and it is also a good place for tourists to travel. The high platform of the execution is still stained with blood, it belongs to Roger One Piece. The town of beginning and end, this is the name the world gave to Lobe Town, and it is the story of Roger. At this time, the execution platform was plunged into a solemn and tense atmosphere. 20 years, has the world forgotten the name of the Black Flag? If you want to deal with us, you must at least invite Admiral. A deep voice sounded, and a strong, burly voice swept around fiercely. Marine, whose eyes touched, trembled one after another. The leading colonel is even more solemn. Such a guy is definitely not an ordinary person. Who is it? Juan. Chapter 246. Advertise here. Under the execution stage, Waldo, Cyrus, Karma, Sebastian, Nachan and others stood there, looking plainly at the Marine that surrounded them. Marine looked at the group nervously, his heart beating faster at the moment. They don't know where the group of guys in front of them came from, but the aura on each other's body makes people feel extremely terrifying. Even the aura that exuded quietly made Marine standing in front of him tremble. What kind of guy is it? Why didn't any news of them spread out on this sea? Colonel Marine trembled, cold sweat on his forehead. This group of people approached the execution platform, stood there in a daze, and wounded Marine who had expelled them, which attracted the attention of the garrison. But when Colonel Marine arrived here, he was instantly stunned by the aura of these guys. Do you want to do it? It's very interesting. If you count the time you have experienced, we have not done anything for 20 years. Waldo laughed. Behind him, Cyrus, Karma and others all laughed. In the life of a pirate, fighting with Marine can be said to be commonplace, and for a large pirate like them, it is even more casual. The group of Marines in front of them couldn't attract their attention at all. Crack, click, click. The sound of the weapon being pulled out, a breath of terrifying majesty, spread out. Then do it. Let us see the strength of Marine now. Waldo grinned grimly. In the next second, Cyrus and others rushed out. Ready to fight. Colonel Marine roared and rushed forward first, and Marine from behind followed closely. Fighting started in an instant. Boom boom boom. The deafening explosion sounded in an instant, and Marine's screams soon came out. After a while, the fighting soon ceased. You little guys, don't even have the qualifications to be our appetizer. Stepping on Colonel Marine's back, Waldo said with a sneer. Who are you guys anyway? The colonel gritted his teeth. He was shocked by the terrifying combat power of this group of people. Such a guy is definitely not something ordinary pirates can achieve. Black Flag. Lousy is a member of the Black Flag Pirates. Valdo said loudly. What is that? The colonel was puzzled. Have you forgotten? But it's okay, you will soon know what the Black Flag is. Waldo said with a sneer. He kicked the colonel in front of him with one kick, his eyes looked far away, cold and deep. After 20 years of flying shuttle, the world has forgotten the existence of the Black Flag. What happened in the middle? The reputation of the Black Flag in the past has resonated throughout the world, so how can it be easily forgotten by the world? The thoughts flashed in Waldo's heart, and the others were also very puzzled. When they came out of the long passage, they were scattered everywhere. Over the past few months, they had also met one by one and gathered together. 20 years of changes have left them very confused. After arriving in this log town, even Marine can't recognize himself, which is undoubtedly very bizarre. You know, in the era when the Black Flag dominated the sea, nothing like this would happen. Have a big fight, Waldo. Tell Marine guys in high positions, we are back. Cyrus said solemnly. He raised his eyes and looked at the distant sea. Tell the captain too, where are we? Waldo grinned. That's what I meant. We traveled through this era, but were separated from the captain. I really don't know where he went. If you want to get together as quickly as possible, you can only blatantly work with Marine and use their influence. The opinions of a group of people were quickly unified, and after looking at each other, they all laughed. In this era, there is no Black Flag, but we are here, the Black Flag is there. Let those who have forgotten remember the fear they once faced again. I heard that Kaido, Shanks, Bigumum, these guys have become 4 emperors. It's really an interesting era. The guys who weren't enough to see in front of us are now famous. This sea must have the name of the Black Flag. We are the overlord of the sea. We were in the past, and we will be in the future. All the voices sounded, and everyone looked serious and solemn. They have conquered the past, and now they have to face the new present. We must learn about the current intelligence of this world as soon as possible and find our former partners. The most important thing is to find the captain. Sebastian said in a deep voice. There is also the deputy captain. Marine dare to put him in impel down. It's so bold. Cyrus rode. When these people talked, they didn't pay much attention to Marine. That sharp, invincible momentum shocked the colonel lying not far away. Who is it? Black Flag. Why have you never heard of their names? Damn, what the hell is going on? As time passed by, a breeze blew around the execution platform, and Waldo and others stood there, feeling the smell of the wind. I seem to smell the captain. Sebastian said suddenly. The others were shocked, their eyes widened, and after looking at each other a few times, they all showed surprise and excitement on their faces. It's the captain. It can't be wrong. I didn't expect to meet again so soon. Everyone laughed, looking towards the street ahead. After a while, a tall, burly figure in a loose robe came into their eyes, making everyone's eyes full of smiles. Everyone, all there. Jiāng Liú stopped and grinned. You are missing, Captain. Nakan laughed. Ashi doesn't seem to be there. After Jiāng Liú glanced around, his eyes narrowed slightly. Sister she should hear from us soon, and she will come to us when that happens. Karma said hee, and pointed to Marine, who was lying downside down on the island. Marine, we shouldn't ignore our existence. Jiāng Liú squinted his eyes and laughed, that's right. He strode over and hugged everyone. Although, we guys haven't seen each other for a few months, but to the outside world. But 20 years. After a pause, Jiāng Liú's momentum rose. Let the world see and see again. Black Flag. Chapter 247. Advertise here. At the same time, inside the Logue Town Marine Station. A lieutenant junior grade officer was sweating profusely at the phone bug in front of him, trembling and saying something. Yes, Colonel Bobby has been defeated by these pirates, and even the more than 100 people who took him with him fell there. I can be sure that this group of people must be pirates, but there is no record of them in the world, including the reward order inside Marine. They are very powerful. According to our people, their ships are huge and their flags are very unique. Lieutenant Junior Grade finished speaking quickly, and then waited nervously for the reply from the phone bug. What is the flag? On the opposite side, a serious and solemn voice came. A solid color and pitch black flag. Lieutenant Junior Grade took a deep breath and replied. Unexpectedly, opposite the phone worm, the voice was emotional and solemn. Order the remaining garrisons not to act rashly, they are not the ones you can deal with. Let them go. The return of this group of people is a major issue for the whole world. 18 inches. The deep voice sounded slowly, which contained seriousness and dignity. This tone also surprised Lieutenant Junior Grade. He had never heard such serious words from a superior on the issue of any pirate. Who are they? Unable to help curiosity, Lieutenant Junior Grade asked nervously. Black flag, a legend that has disappeared for a long time. The call worm quickly hung up after the mysterious and profound words came. Lieutenant Junior Grade was stunned and lost in thought. He had never heard of this term, but he faintly felt a feeling of heart palpitations. If you can let your superiors give instructions not to act rashly, you can imagine how terrifying the danger of this group of people is. Logue Town, executed Taichung. Jiāng Liú and the group reunited, and everyone had a smile on their faces. Next, what are we going to do? Captain, Cyrus asked aloud. Go to the Grand Line and solve some things we have to solve. Jiāng Liú said lightly. Ace on the side was staring at the execution table in a daze, with a complex and solemn expression. He is. Waldo asked. Roger's child. Jiāng Liú said. Everyone stared at Ace in surprise. Unexpectedly, that guy still left a child in the world. It's amazing. This kid looks like a calm guy, but he doesn't look like him at all. Ace seemed to have fallen into his own world and didn't hear the people talking about him. After a while, he slowly let out a sigh of relief, and a confident and expectant expression gradually appeared on his face. Achievement you can achieve, I can also achieve it. After a pause, Ace grinned. I will surpass you. Surpassing Roger, the Pirate King, this kind of word sounds naturally shocking to the world, but when Ace speaks it, there is another feeling. Boy, I want to surpass Roger, the way you have to go is still long. Waldo said aloud, I will do it, and I must do it. Because I want to beat the man in front of me. Ace turned around, looked at Jiāng Liú, and said firmly. Ha ha ha, you want to defeat the captain. That's more difficult than surpassing Roger. Waldo was startled and laughed. Jiāng Liú doesn't care, the other party talks about him all day, which is also an interesting thing for him. The younger generation regards himself as the goal of transcendence, which also shows that he has reached a peak. Let's go, we should leave here too. Jiāng Liú smiled faintly. The others responded with a sudden, and the group quickly turned around and walked out of Logue Town. We have already prepared the necessary reserves. We stay here just to wait for you to find the captain. Now that everything is ready, let's go. Cyrus said loudly. Sister Shi, we have also found a circle, and we are not in East Blue. The place where she went seems to be different from us. Karma said. When Jiāng Liú heard the words, he started to think. Obviously, Tianyushi is not skilled enough in mastering the fruits of time, and can only travel through the future, not to mention it, and even the position after crossing, time may not be able to accurately control. He asked this group of cadres that they didn't need any places where they left behind, and even the exact time was staggered. In other words, the time after the entire ship passes through is not the same. Start sailing. Jiāng Liú quickly boarded the Shanghai pirate ship, came to the bow of the ship where he had been sitting cross-legged for a while, and laughed loudly. Wow! The Millennium Dragon roared, the black flag shook suddenly, and the huge sails opened. Soon, the Black Pearl cut through the sea and set off from Logue Town, flying out like an arrow. At this moment, the whole world started to boil. The Waldo Group and the Black Pearl had already been seen by many people, and the news spread out unconcealed. Naval Headquarters, Marineford. Following Jiāng Liú, Waldo, Cyrus, Sebastian, etc., this group of guys really appeared again. They defeated the branch garrison led by Colonel Bobby in Logue Town, and have just left the port on the Black Pearl. We can't know how they hide themselves, in the eyes of the people of the world, disappeared for so long. But it is certain. Sengoku's voice was heavy, his eyes suddenly sharp. Next to the world, there will be big trouble. On the other side, the Holy Land Mariajoy. This group of people, the lingering soul, has entered everyone's eyes again. The old voice sounded, mixed with solemnity and helplessness. They have enjoyed a very good quiet these years, and even solved major hidden dangers, such as the O'Hara incident, Roger's remnants. But only the Black Flag, even if it destroys its base camp, still cannot completely eliminate them. The power of the Black Flag back then was too strong, and the guys who hid it might have radiated all over the world and could not be killed at all. The world is going to be in chaos. He sighed softly, and there was a sharp flash in the eyes of the old figure. Since they can no longer be hidden, let them be made public. The war in the future can no longer be avoided. 20 years have passed, even if that man comes back again, everything he once owned has already disappeared. This is his most vulnerable moment. After a pause, the old man's voice was cold. Moreover, in this world, there are more people who want to take off his crown. Chapter 248. Advertise here. All over the world, in newspapers on islands. Black Flag. Why have you never heard of this name? Which pirate group is this? On the table, the newcomers looked at the intelligence in front of them, questioning them. Not far away, the old men with white beards and hair lying on the table with slightly squinted eyes were suddenly surprised. Black Flag. What are you talking about? What Black Flag? This nervous, excited expression stunned the newcomers. Logue Town just came out a newsletter saying that it was the pirate group named Black Flag who defeated the Marine in the branch. Naval headquarters. It seems that the reaction to this is very subtle. They did not send Marine to take immediate action, but let them leave. Someone explained patiently. Black Flag, is it really a black flag? Is there any video data transferred? The old man asked tremblingly. The light in his eyes was very bright. The newcomers are a little surprised. This old senior has always looked drowsy when he goes to work. The seniority of the other party is very old, and they all respect him very much on weekdays. Legend has it that the other party made a huge contribution to the newspaper 20 years ago, and once reported a very important headline, thus securing a firm position. But their impression of it is that no matter what situation they encounter, they are calm and calm. Such an attitude has never been seen before. There is a picture of the boat, and there is no news about the others. New humanity. Let me see. The old man immediately found his reading glasses, then put them on tremblingly, and looked at the photos spread in front of him. When he saw the hull of the ship clearly, the old man trembled with excitement. It's them. Black Flag. That Black Flag. They are back again. Then he took a deep breath and stood up and shouted. Quick, step up to print this news. I want it to spread to all parts of the world as quickly as possible. Let the whole world know. Something big. Such remarks shocked everyone who worked in the newspaper. The news spread to all parts of the world at an extremely fast speed. New World, aboard the Moby Dick. The homing pigeon crowed and sprinkled a newspaper from his mouth. Marco habitually stretched out his hand, and then casually looked at it. In recent days, the situation on the ocean has not changed, and there is nothing to pay attention to. But the moment he looked at the newspaper, his body was shaken. What are you kidding? This ship. His pupils suddenly shrank in an instant, and his whole body trembled immediately afterwards. The black overall frame and streamlined hull are like black gems and pearls, full of mystery and peculiar charm. Black Pearl. He called out loudly. These three words suddenly made everyone on the boat look back, and Diamond Joe's looked at him blankly. The Black Pearl, the name of this ship, has not been heard by the people on board for many years. Marco, what are you calling? Foil Vista said with a smile. Marco was holding the newspaper in both hands, his hands were shaking, he stared at the image in the newspaper, and carefully confirmed it again. Really, it's really this ship. The Black Pearl that disappeared for 20 years. The trembling voice made everyone stunned, and then their expressions became serious. They are not deaf, and naturally understand the meaning of what Marco said, but is it really the name they think? In the next moment, Marco turned around and looked at everyone. Unbelievable, they actually came back, that ship appeared. It has appeared again. Afterwards, Marco dashed wildly and ran towards the center of the deck. The tall figure sitting on the chair made his voice trembling and excited. Father. Whitebeard raised his head, poured a drink, looked at Marco and said with a smile, Goo la 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 la. Marco, why are you so excited? Marco took a deep breath. Black Pearl appeared. The smile on Whitebeard's face suddenly solidified. He straightened up suddenly and stared at Marco. Are you kidding? Newspaper. It's already published in the newspaper. The Black Pearl appeared in East Blue and docked at the port of Logue Town. A group of unknown pirates wiped out Marine, the branch of Logue Town, and left. After a pause, Marco breathed a sigh of relief and said loudly again. This matter has spread all over the world, father. After speaking, he quickly delivered the newspaper to Whitebeard's hands. The latter looked at it intently. After reading the boat in the newspaper, his pupils shrank and the expression on his entire face solidified. Quote. It disappeared for 20 years, and now suddenly appeared in the world's vision. Where have you been? Quote. Jiāng Liú. A deep voice came from Whitebeard's mouth. Lousy. I thought you were dead. Goo la 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 la. Whitebeard looked up to the sky and laughed, tears of laughter coming out. Marco looked at his father's expression, but he was also complicated. The three brothers back then thought that Whitebeard was the only one left, but now they suddenly appeared again. Although there was the conflict between the old man and the other party 20 years ago, the emotions between each other still exist. Otherwise, Jiāng Liú would not be merciful, and my father would not have been looking at the black restricted area and Wanokuni's direction from time to time during the past 2 decades. I look forward to the time to reunite with you again on this sea, and have a drink. Even if, for the money, fight with you again, what about it? Whitebeard yelled. IWC. Cake Island. Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú, I have to settle the account back then with you. A deep, majestic voice suddenly sounded, Begum's eyes were blood red, and the angry expression on his face could not be suppressed. She will never forget the scene when she was rejected by the other party that day on the ocean. Today, she has become the noble 4 emperors, the emperor of this sea. But the scene of that day, like a shadow, enveloped her life, so she will never forget it. Wanokuni. Ha Yuan. The wine jar in his hand was suddenly crushed, a hideous, ferocious face slowly lifted, and two corners pierced the sky. The terrifying aura spread out at this moment, and the deep dragon roar shook the void. Jiāng Liú, you are not dead. Chapter 249. Advertise here. The pirates around felt this terrifying breath and terrible pressure, making them tremble. Captain Kaido. Someone screamed in horror. Kaido at this moment is terrifying. Kaido, a beast that has become the four emperors, is naturally different in strength, power, and aura compared to the past. Jiāng Liú. The low roar sounded again. Kaido lowered his head and looked at the wound on his body. On the abdomen, there were scars and terrible twists. These are the marks left by that person. He hasn't been injured much for so many years, but in his only 2 battles, he has left scars and shadows that are difficult to erase. Kaido will definitely hate that man in this life. You finally appeared again. The sound of crushing teeth shook the void. Kaido's eyes were cold and stern. Others don't know what Kaido's emotions are, and only the Jin, Quinn and Jack, who followed him from the beginning, knew what was going on. At this moment, they looked solemn, and they also held newspapers in their hands, and the black pearl number on it was clearly visible. They are back again. Muttering, Jack recalled the fear he had faced when facing each other. Even if 20 years have passed, they now have resources that are not much different from the power that the other party once possessed, but everyone's face is still extremely dignified. At the same moment, on a desert island, smoky smoke rose slowly, and a joyous banquet was being held on the shore. Shanks. Suddenly, someone screamed in a deep voice. Huh, Usopp. What's the matter? Shanks picked up the jar with one hand, took a sip in his mouth, and asked with a smile. East Blue seems to have a great guy. Usopp said. East Blue. Shanks froze for a moment, then smiled again. Who? Remember the ace that we followed 2 days ago? It's Luffy's brother. Usopp said solemnly. Of course, I still want to meet him in New World. Shanks laughed. That guy was beaten with a finger in the restaurant on the sea. Usopp said. As soon as the words were uttered, Shanks' complexion became solemn. Of course, Ace had perfused him. Judging from his deeds after going out to sea, he is a guy with great potential. Especially the other party, who holds Mera Mera fruit, has the qualifications to become a great pirate. A finger? Shanks asked in a deep voice. Yes, and that person doesn't seem to be just a person, but a member of a pirate group. It's this ship, look at it, do you recognize it? Usopp said, handing over the newspaper. Shanks took it and looked at the newspaper. Suddenly, his whole body was shocked, and his eyes were full of shock and incredible. This ship, what's the matter? Do you recognize it? Usopp asked curiously, and the others turned around and looked. I will never forget this ship for the rest of my life. Shanks' eyes were solemn, and his voice was heavy. A reminiscence appeared on his face, looking towards the sea. I just didn't expect that after they disappeared, they would reappear above the sea. After a pause, Shanks sighed. I'm back this time, I'm afraid something big will happen soon. Unlike Roger Pirates, their captain. The voice became deep and distant. But I never said that the pirate group would be disbanded. Faintly, Shanks had already seen a bloody storm about to rise. With that person's character, if he knew what happened to his previous crew members, he would probably be furious. Guys, watch this sea quietly. Next, something big will happen. Above the sea, the wind is surging and the waves are magnificent, and the times are not static. For Marine, the era of great pirates is an era of great pressure. The number of pirates has increased sharply, and powerful criminal gangs have emerged in an endless stream. Compared with the era called Jiāng Liú, the current era has given Marine a headache. But if the black flag is added in this era, it will not only be a headache. Time passed, and discussions about the black flag and the black pearl became more and more intense in the world. For this reason, the past that the older generation had decided to bury in their hearts was also made public at this time. Black flag pirates. That jet black and solid color flag once frightened, shocked, and excited countless people. It appeared in the eyes of the world again. Many people learned the story of Haichi from the mouths of the older generation. They were dumbfounded and even more unbelievable. If this era is called the Great Pirate, then the name of the previous era is Black Flag. That is the era when a group of pirates shines by one person alone. That man, who owns the entire sea, conquered everything. But at the same time, many young pirates, after seeing them, are also ambitious. They don't have the impression of a black flag, let alone the power of the four emperors, and the ignorant or fearless. Many people regard the black flag as a target. Since he is an old guy from the last era, it should be the latter first to dominate this era. They old things should have gone with the wind long ago. They stood on their pirate ship, grinning grinningly and uttering such arrogant remarks. It can be said that the entire world was shaken by the sudden appearance of the black flag. At the same time, many members of the Black Flag pirate group who were hiding in the dark also walked out from various places. They were holding newspapers in their hands and looking at the familiar ship, their whole bodies trembling. Finally came back. Black Pearl, Captain, and the cadres. They are all back. Impel down, 6th floor, Eternal Hell. Da 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 da. The crisp sound of footsteps sounded, and the dark passage was quiet and gloomy. This is the place where Marine used to imprison the world-renowned big pirates. Those who can be imprisoned here were once the most famous and brutal guys in the world. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped before a cage. Letterfield. A low voice sounded, and the people in the cage did not respond, as if they were already dead. I know what you are waiting for. Now, let me tell you. The people you were waiting for, they showed up. The voice came out again, and a ray of light suddenly lit up in the cage. Garp. Some hoarse voices sounded, echoing in this sixth layer. Are they back? Chapter 250. The next second, the cage was suddenly held tightly by a pair of old hands, Karara shook, and a face covered with wrinkles appeared in Garp's eyes. I didn't expect you to be so old. Garp frowned, then he shook his head. Yes, you are from the same age as Roger and Whitebeard. I have gray hair. What's more, you who are older than me. At this time, Letterfield ignored what the other party was saying, his eyes were fixed, and he stared at Garp. You said, they're back. Garp nodded. That's why I came to you, to see if you are dead. How could I die? He promised me and he will definitely come back again. Leadfield laughed. Now, I'm waiting. So, after a pause, Leadfeld grinned coldly. It's your marine disaster. Garp didn't refute it. Even if he faced Jiāng Liú, he still felt a lot of pressure. Single-handedly, he might not be the opponent's opponent. 20 years have passed, and his body is developing toward the old trend, and the other party, I am afraid it happens to be in the prime of life. Even if the combat power and physical condition are reduced, there will not necessarily be much. Even with the addition of Sengoku and 3 Admiral, the group of cadres from the opponent still exist. Moreover, Garp knew deeply that the most terrifying aspect of Jiāng Liú was not his strength. It's the other party, that cunning, insidious, and cruel style. He wouldn't rely on his own strength to be strong, he would not trust his companions, or be too proud, but never behave like a drip without any shortcomings. 20 years ago, his own strength was already very strong, but he was still entangled with a group of companions. In the end, his power grew stronger and stronger, reaching a point that even the world could hardly ignore. But now, his return will definitely lead a group of guys who have followed him to reappear on this sea again. That is the biggest threat to the other party. We will look at you, and at this moment, even if you go out, what can you do? Impel Down's defense, you should be very clear, even Jiāng Liú and the others cannot attack here and save you. Garp said in a deep voice. Letterfield's eyes sharpened, but after looking at each other for a moment, he turned around and sat cross-legged. In the history of Impel Down, only one person has escaped, and that is Golden Lion Shiki. Its defense is rigorous and it is absolutely world-class. What's more, since the black flag has appeared, I am afraid that every move will no longer be ignored by the world. If you want to save yourself, you must not rely on your companions. I will go out. Garp. When Garp turned around, there was a sentence like this from the cage, which gave him a slight pause. But soon, Garp left here. With the emergence of the black flag, Impel Down will inevitably step up the defense. Not only Letterfield is imprisoned here, but there are also some other people in the black flag. They are equally important, and this group of extremely sinful people must take them seriously. Time passed quietly, and a month passed in a blink of an eye. Grand Line. The jet-black jewel-like ship is riding the wind and waves, driving fast forward. On the deck, the two figures kept colliding, making banging sounds. Others have different postures, watching the battle. Ace, don't rely on your fruit ability, be good at using hockey. Jiāng Liú lightly flapped the attack on the opposite side, and said. Damn it, it doesn't work at all times. Ace said angrily. Learn to use instinct. Jiāng Liú said. Conqueror's awakening takes time, as does the armed color. Today's ace, after training, can be regarded as awakened armed color and conquerors. However, it is still in an awkward state. After the body got used to that weight, Ace's strength naturally increased. Mera Fruit's ability, inspired by Jiāng Liú, has been newly developed. Fire Dragon. Suddenly, Ace leapt high and roared. Chi-Chi-Chi's flame burning sounded constantly, spreading quickly behind it, forming the shape of a giant dragon. Woohoo! The fire dragon's wings spread out, covering a radius of nearly 30 meters, opening its mouth wide and burning flames all over, and pounced towards Jiāng Liú. It doesn't work for me, you have tried it many times. Jiāng Liú said lightly. Find flowers. After speaking, he stepped out one step at a time. A ripple spread. Suddenly, everything around seemed to become heavier. The fire dragon that flew down was crushed by the weight in an instant, and even the atoms and molecules in it were decomposed. Disappeared before people's eyes. Musket. At this moment, Ace held a spear outlined by flames and dived over. Is it just cover? This combat plan is not bad. Jiāng Liú commented. But the next second, he stretched out his hand and grabbed the spear, then slammed it, and Ace was thrown out with the spear and the man. But the power is still a bit short. After a while, Ace squatted on the boat with a frustrated expression. Is the gap too big? 0. I have nothing to do with you. Jiāng Liú smiled. If the world's number one is so surpassable, it would be ridiculous. I still don't understand, where are we so bad? Is it just hockey? Ace was puzzled. It's just that the gap between hockey is huge, young man. Jiāng Liú said with a sigh. Ace curled his lips, but obviously didn't believe it. He smiled and didn't explain again. There are many ways to use hockey alone, such as the practice of armed color, the mastery of emission, seeing and hearing color, the high level of seeing and hearing color, and conqueror's entanglement. Every progress is a qualitative leap, and there are strict requirements for the requirements and improvement of strength. Ace's practice today is obviously not enough. But in the future, he can only go on his own, and do it through the battles between life and death. The two have been fighting every day in the past few days. In this process, Ace will understand his shortcomings, and Jiāng Liú is also trying to master or strengthen the old and new abilities. For the development of quality fruits, he is entering a new realm. Captain, Alabasta is in front. At this time, Waldo's voice came. Alabasta. Jiāng Liú turned his head, his eyes flickered. He looked up, looked at the place where the 1,000-year-old dragon lay on the ship, and sighed softly. Go and see. There, after our deceased. Wan.